The phone call arrived precisely at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, shattering the silence of my second week of freedom. That's what I called it, freedom. 36 years of standing in front of a sixth-grade classroom at Willow Creek Middle School in Seattle had finally earned me the right to silence, to an afternoon that belonged entirely to me. My name is Eleanor Vance, and at 68, I thought I knew exactly what my life was going to be. I was sitting in my sunroom, surrounded by travel guides, the rugged peaks of the Dolomites, the ancient cobblestones of Lisbon, a long, winding trip through the Canadian Rockies I'd dreamed of since I was a girl. These brochures were my victory flags, proof that every early morning and every late parent-teacher conference had been worth it. All of it had been for this moment. For me, when I saw the name Veronica flash on my screen, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the answer button, already knowing the metallic taste of obligation that followed her calls. Veronica, my daughter-in-law. She never used my first name, but she certainly never called me Mom or even mother-in-law. To her, I was simply an available resource. I took a deep breath. "Hello, Veronica." "Ellie," she began, rushing past any pleasantries, her voice sharp and pressurized as usual. "I'm dropping the kids off with you tomorrow morning. I have a last-minute opportunity in Vegas. It's a game changer. 2 weeks." I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, a slow boil that always started with her casual arrogance. "I'm sorry, Veronica, I have plans." "Plans?" She scoffed, a brittle, high-pitched laugh I detested. What plans could a retired woman have? Knitting? Sudoku? "Please, Ellie, don't be ridiculous. I need you to watch Leo, Clara, and Finn. You don't do anything anymore, so you have all the time in the world. You don't do anything anymore." That sentence hit me like a physical blow. 36 years of shaping young minds, sacrificing my entire adult life after my husband Daniel was lost in that fishing accident off the Oregon coast when our son Julian was just a boy. 36 years of double shifts, of selling baked goods at the church fair every Sunday just to pay for Julian's tuition at the state university. And this woman, who had never held a job for more than 6 months and lived off my son's hard-earned construction management salary like a jewel beetle clinging to a leaf, was telling me that I did nothing. "I won't watch them for you, Veronica." My voice was low, barely a whisper of resistance. "What do you mean you won't? You're their grandmother. It's your duty." Besides, Julian agrees. Another lie. Julian was working 16-hour days on a high-rise project downtown. He wouldn't know about this. He was too tired, too beaten down by the constant demands of his own wife to fight back. Then came the threat, cold and precise. "If you ever want to see my children again, you'll cooperate, Ellie, because I decide if they have a grandmother or not." In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It solidified. The tired, accommodating old woman she imagined me to be vanished. The veteran teacher, the one who handled impossible situations with difficult parents and troubled children for decades, took her place. "All right." "Veronica," I said, my voice now smooth as silk, sweeter than I'd ever used on her. "Bring them over tomorrow, say 7 in the morning. "That's more like it," she sneered. "And don't feed them your cheap junk food like last time. Keep them off the internet and don't fill their heads with your old-fashioned nonsense." If Julian had a decent mother, he wouldn't be so easily manipulated. I ended the call before she could finish, before I could hear the full extent of her viciousness. I sat there for a long time, the little sunroom suddenly feeling huge and quiet. I looked at the framed certificate on the wall, for 36 years of dedicated service to the youth of Washington State. I wasn't a free servant. And if I had learned anything in all those years, it was that the most important lessons aren't taught with lectures, but with consequences. I reached for my phone, my fingers dialing a number I hadn't used in years. "Margaret?" "Yes, it's Eleanor. I need a favor." Do you still have those small, inconspicuous recorders you used during your custody battle? Perfect. And one more thing. Is your friend Clara still working at Child Protective Services? Excellent. I poured myself a cup of Earl Grey tea. Tomorrow, Veronica would deliver my 3 grandchildren. Leo, the 12-year-old with his face permanently glued to a screen. Clara, the 10-year-old with the perpetual scowl. And Finn, the 7-year-old bundle of suppressed energy. Tomorrow, the real education would begin. But it wouldn't be for the children. It would be for their mother. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I tossed and turned in my linen sheets, the ghosts of 2 decades of sacrifice swirling around me. How had I allowed myself to be treated like an old piece of furniture, only useful when required for storage? The path had been set in motion decades ago. Daniel, my husband, was the love of my life, a man whose hands always smelled of sea salt and diesel. We were young, happy, and had so many plans for our future. A small cabin in the San Juans, travel, a retirement filled with fishing trips. Then came the blizzard, a sudden, brutal squall that capsized his trawler near Port Angeles. He was gone in minutes. I was 27, left with a 3-year-old son, Julian, and a fresh teaching degree from the University of Washington. The early years were a kind of hell I wouldn't wish on anyone. I had $150 in the bank and a grief that threatened to swallow me whole. I worked double shifts, mornings at the public school, evenings tutoring for wealthy families. Julian ate before I did. If there was money for one winter coat, it was for him. I would pretend I wasn't cold, that a single piece of toast was enough for me. My mother, God rest her soul, begged me to remarry, to find someone who could provide. But I would look at Julian's deep blue eyes, just like his father's, and know that no stepfather would ever love him the way I did. I had to do it alone. The sacrifices were endless, quiet, and invisible. I remembered the Christmas when Julian was 8. I had saved for 10 months to buy him a used, slightly rusty red bicycle he desperately wanted. On Christmas Eve, I realized I had exactly $12 left. Not enough for a decent Christmas dinner. I went to a pawn shop and sold my grandmother's locket, the only piece of fine jewelry I owned other than my wedding ring, for $50. That money bought us a small ham and all the trimmings. Julian never knew. To him, his mother was a magician. She could do anything. It was all worth it when Julian was accepted to the University of Washington's prestigious construction management program. My son, the son of a widowed public school teacher, was going to be an engineer. I was bursting with pride. Then came Veronica in Julian's junior year. He brought her home one Sunday. She was a vision in a pastel blue dress, all perfect smiles and long, shiny black hair. She looked like something out of a magazine. She hugged me, a full, warm embrace that disarmed my 20 years of emotional stoicism. "Oh, Mrs. Vance," she gushed. "Julian has told me so much. I admire you, raising such a wonderful son all by yourself. You're my hero. How could I not fall into that trap? I, who had gone 2 decades without a sincere, non-familial hug, was suddenly being called a hero by this pretty young girl. The first few years were good. She came over, helped me cook, told me about her humble upbringing in rural Idaho. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a factory worker. "That's why I get you, Mrs. Vance," she claimed. "You and I know what it's like to struggle. Lies. All of it." They married immediately after Julian's graduation. I paid for half the wedding, dipping into the retirement savings I had put aside for my global travels. "It's an investment in my son's happiness," I justified. Veronica cried with emotion. Or so I thought. Now I know she was crying because the open bar wasn't lavish enough. The change was slow, a subtle poison administered in small doses. First came the comments. "Pies are lovely, Ellie, but they're so simple. I make a more gourmet version." If you had saved better, Julian could have gone to a private university, not just state school. You can see his lack of ambition. Each word was a small stab, but I endured it. For Julian. Always for Julian. When Leo, my first grandson, was born, I rushed to the hospital with a hand-knitted blanket, a simple thing I'd labored over for months. Veronica looked at it, set it aside as if it were contaminated. Thanks, but we have everything from Saks. This? We can donate it. Saks. While I was still buying my clothes at Goodwill to save money for Julian's future, she was spending my son's salary at the most expensive stores. Then came Clara and Finn. With each new grandchild, I drifted further away. Veronica had 1,000 excuses. The children needed routine. I would spoil them. My small craftsman home wasn't safe enough. My parenting ideas were hopelessly old-fashioned. Kids today need early stimulation, Ellie, she once informed me. Mandarin classes, robotics camp, not just your silly peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that Julian grew up on. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. My son grew up with love, values, and the certain knowledge that he was cherished. But Veronica had successfully started her campaign of pushing me out, and Julian was too overworked and exhausted to notice. The deepest wound came 5 years ago, on Clara's birthday. I'd saved for 3 months to buy the elaborate, hand-painted wooden dollhouse she'd seen in a local toy shop. I arrived at their sprawling suburban house with the gift wrapped in glittering paper. The backyard was a carnival, a bouncy house, a magician, a fully catered buffet. I wasn't on the guest list. "Oh, Ellie, what a shame," Veronica said at the door, not even opening it all the way. "It's just a party for Clara's school friends and their parents. They're different people. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. The grandmother of the birthday girl would make the different people uncomfortable. I saw Julian in the background, laughing with a group of men. He saw me. He looked away. He knew I was there and did nothing. I left with my dollhouse and drove home, crying all the way. That night, I donated the dollhouse to the local orphanage. At least there, it would be appreciated. And now, after years of this systematic humiliation, this contempt, Veronica expected me to be her free, on-call servant. She thought the pain of years could be erased with a snap of her fingers just because she needed me. But she didn't know that Mrs. Vance, the retired teacher, had spent 36 years not just teaching reading and math, but studying child psychology, observing dysfunctional family dynamics, and learning to wait for the perfect, most undeniable moment to act. At 7 sharp the next morning, the bell rang. Not 7:05, not 7:10. Veronica was always punctual when it suited her. I opened the door. There they were, 3 children with identically miserable expressions and suitcases larger than their torsos. "I don't have time to chat," Veronica announced, not even stepping inside. "Leo is allergic to your old feather pillows. Clara only eats organic, gluten-free, and green vegetables are a non-negotiable disaster. Finn needs his tablet to sleep." She pointed a manicured nail at a blue suitcase. "Medications are in there. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And Julian?" I asked. "Isn't he coming to say goodbye?" "Julian is working, as always. Someone has to support this family." She looked me up and down with open disdain. Not all of us were lucky enough to get a government pension. My pension, $1,700 a month after 36 years. Veronica spent more than that on a single visit to her esthetician for fillers and extensions. The children shuffled inside, dragging their feet across my polished hardwood floor. Leo, the 12-year-old, phone already glued to his face, looking for a signal. Clara, the 10-year-old, with a permanent look of bored disgust. Finn, the 7-year-old, immediately scanned the room for a television. "Be good for your grandmother," Veronica said, entirely without conviction. She leaned in close to me and whispered, her breath smelling of designer coffee, "And don't you dare fill their heads with nonsense. Remember, I decide if they ever see you again." Then she was gone. No kiss, no hug, just the click of her ridiculously expensive heels and the roar of her brand-new, enormous SUV as she sped away. I stood there with 3 children who looked at me as if I were the enemy, an antiquated, malfunctioning robot they were forced to endure. I remembered all the small moments Veronica had used to build this wall between us. That time Julian's grandmother, my mother, had left me $3,000 for a much-needed roof repair. Veronica had intercepted the money, claiming they needed it for the children's private school tuition. I never saw a receipt. The roof still leaked. A month later, Veronica was carrying a Louis Vuitton handbag. "A friend gave it to me," she'd said. "A friend, right?" "Grandma," Leo's voice jolted me out of my thoughts. "Where's the Wi-Fi? I need the password now." "The modem is broken," I lied smoothly. I had unplugged it 5 minutes before they arrived. "What?" "No way, Mom!" "Mom!" He started screaming, a high-pitched, self-pitying wail of pure outrage. "Your mother is gone, Leo," I said calmly. "And screaming won't bring the internet back. You're the worst grandmother in the world. That's why nobody likes you." There it was, Veronica's poison, dripping from the mouth of my own grandson. It didn't hurt. I was prepared for it. "I'm hungry," Clara interrupted, her voice a practiced whine. "But I'm not eating anything you cook. Mom says you're a terrible cook, and that's why Dad is so skinny." "I want to watch cartoons," Finn added, stamping his foot. "At home I watch cartoons all day." I looked at the 3 of them. Perfect products of neglect, disguised as privileged modern children. They knew no limits, understood no concept of respect, and had been programmed to despise me. I remembered last Christmas. I'd spent 2 days preparing my famous holiday prime rib with my mother's special spice rub, green bean casserole, and cranberry sauce. I'd arrived at their house with the dish still hot. The children, drawn by the smell, ran to the kitchen. "Don't touch that!" Veronica screamed. "We don't know what kind of conditions your grandmother prepared it in. We'll order takeout." On Christmas Eve. I watched as she threw my prime rib in the trash without even a taste. The children looked at me with open pity, as if I were a beggar who had brought leftovers. "Grandma's food is too greasy," Veronica had explained to them. "And her kitchen probably has mice." A lie. My kitchen was cleaner than an operating room. But Julian was there, watching the whole thing. And all he'd said was, "Veronica knows what's best for the kids." That night, I decided my son was lost, drowning in a sea of emotional abuse. But my grandchildren? My grandchildren might still have a chance. "Grandma, do something." "We're bored." Leo threw a silk cushion onto the floor. "You know what?" I told them, my voice calm, the perfect teacher's tone. "Your mother asked me to take care of you, not to entertain you. There's food in the kitchen, water in the tap, and beds to sleep in. If you want anything else, Wi-Fi, television, snacks, you'll have to earn it." "Earn it?" Clara looked genuinely offended. "We're kids." "We don't have to earn anything in this house." "In this house, everyone contributes," I countered. "That's how I was raised. That's how I raised your father, before your mother ruined him. And that's how these 2 weeks are going to work." "I'm going to tell my mom you're mean," Finn threatened. "Go ahead," I said, walking towards my desk. "And while you're at it, tell her I found her Facebook page very interesting. Especially the photos from Cabo last month, when she was supposedly at a financial planning seminar." The children fell silent. They didn't fully understand, but they sensed a shift in the tectonic plates beneath them. This grandmother was not the one they had been programmed to mock. That first night was a calculated act of war. Leo kicked his bedroom door and screamed until his throat was raw. Clara cried for hours, demanding the exact brand of organic almond milk she preferred. Finn, not to be outdone, wet the bed with purposeful defiance. They wanted to break me, just as their mother had tried to break me for years. But at 2 in the morning, I heard soft, real sobs coming from Clara's room. Not the theatrical tantrums of before, but deep, genuine grief. I entered silently and found her clutching a crumpled piece of paper. "What do you have there, my girl?" She startled, hiding the paper under her pillow. "Nothing. Go away." But I had seen it. It was a faded picture of me with her when she was an infant. One of the few times I was allowed to hold her before Veronica's campaign of alienation began. "Do you miss your mom?" I asked, sitting gently on the edge of the bed. "No," she answered too quickly. "Mom always leaves. I'm used to it. We're used to it." There it was. The first hairline crack in the enemy's armor. Veronica hadn't just abandoned me. She had normalized abandoning her own children, using money and gifts as a substitute for real attachment. "Clara, how often does your mom go on these trips?" "I don't know. Once a month? Sometimes more. She always says it's for work, but..." "But what, sweetie?" "But nothing. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Mom says family problems stay in the family. Family problems stay in the family. The golden rule of abusers, silence and secrecy." I got up and walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned back. "Clara, would you like to learn how to make the snickerdoodle cookies you used to love when you were little?" Her eyes momentarily were like twin lanterns, but they dimmed quickly. "Mom says your kitchen is dirty." "Your mom says a lot of things," I replied. "Why don't you find out for yourself tomorrow?" I closed the door, leaving her with the seed of doubt. The first move had been played. What I didn't know then was that Leo's abandoned phone, the one he couldn't use without Wi-Fi, held messages that would expose Veronica's darkest secret. Messages that would explain why she had really gone to Las Vegas. And when I uncovered them, I would understand that I wasn't just saving my grandchildren. I was saving my entire family from a woman far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The second day dawned with a clear objective. At 6 in the morning, before the children woke, Margaret arrived with a small, discreet shoebox. "Here's everything you asked for," she whispered, handing me the package. 3 button-sized recorders, a tiny camera disguised as a smoke detector, and these. She pulled out a manila envelope. "The credit reports you requested. Eleanor, your daughter-in-law has accrued almost $45,000 in debt, all in Julian's name. He has no idea my heart ached for my son. My poor, exhausted Julian. And Clara from Child Protective Services," Margaret continued. "She's coming tomorrow afternoon at 3 as a casual routine visit. But Eleanor, you need concrete evidence if you want to pursue legal action. Evidence." That was exactly what I was going to get. When the children woke, a feast was waiting on the dining room table. Fluffy buttermilk pancakes shaped like bears and stars, fresh blueberries, and hot chocolate. Not the horrible food their mother had warned them about. Leo was the first one down, still in his rumpled pajamas. He stopped dead when he saw the spread. "What's this?" "Breakfast. Eat before it gets cold." He sat down, suspicious, took a bite, and for the first time since he'd arrived, I saw the ghost of a smile. But he quickly composed himself. "It's fine. I've had better." Clara and Finn came down, drawn by the comforting, buttery aroma. Finn launched himself at the pancakes. "These are so good, Grandma." "Shut up, stupid," Clara hissed, elbowing him. "We're not supposed to..." She trailed off. "You're not supposed to what, Clara?" I asked gently. "Nothing. After breakfast," I laid down the new law. "If you want Wi-Fi, television, or any privileges, you have to earn them. Leo, your job is to wash the dishes. Clara, you make the beds. Finn, you're in charge of organizing the games in the cabinet. That's child labor," Leo shouted, falling back on his practiced outrage. "No, my boy. Child labor is what I see on your mother's phone." I pulled out my own phone and showed them a screenshot of Veronica's publicly available Instagram profile. "Look, here's your mother in Las Vegas on the rooftop of a hotel with a man who is not your father." The 3 children crowded around. In the photo, Veronica was in a glittering dress, draped around a stocky man with a diamond earring. The caption read, "In new life, I'm finally free." "That's Uncle Marcus," Finn said, his voice small and innocent. "Mom's friend who sometimes comes over when Dad is at work." Leo instantly covered his brother's mouth, but it was too late. The second critical piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. "Uncle Marcus?" I asked, as casually as if I were asking about the weather. "How often does Uncle Marcus come over?" Leo looked at me in pure panic. "We're not supposed to talk about that. Mom said if we told anyone about Uncle Marcus, Dad would get very, very sad and could even die of sadness." My God. The level of emotional manipulation was worse than I thought. "Kids, your father isn't going to die of sadness. Adults don't work like that. But I need you to tell me the truth. It's important. Why?" Clara crossed her arms, reverting to her protective, hostile stance. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I love you," I answered without flinching. "And when you love someone, you protect them. And right now you need protection. It was Finn who broke first. The youngest, the most vulnerable, the one not yet completely contaminated. Grandma, why does Mom say you're mean if you make such yummy pancakes?" "I don't know, sweetheart. What else does your mom say about me?" "She says you're poor and embarrassing," he whispered. "That's why we can't visit you. She says your house smells bad and that you're a bitter old woman who ruined Dad's life." Every word was a small dagger, but I held my composure. I reached under the dining room table and discreetly installed one of the button-sized recorders Margaret had given me. "Your house smells like cinnamon and coffee," Clara suddenly mumbled, looking down at her empty plate. "It smells like home." That afternoon, while the children were reluctantly completing their assigned chores, complaining loudly but doing them, I accessed Leo's phone. I knew these modern children save everything to a cloud. With a little patience, I managed to log into his shared family photo account. What I found chilled me to the bone. Not just photos, but screenshots of instant message conversations between Veronica and this Marcus. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting something much darker. "I have almost everything ready," Veronica had written. Julian signed the refinance papers without reading them, as usual. "The house equity is completely leveraged, and the title is now just in my name." "And the brats?" Marcus had replied. "I'll leave them with the old woman the second I file for divorce. Julian works so much he barely sees them. He won't be able to ask for custody. But we need more cash to move to Vegas for good. The old woman has this house. It's old, but it's worth at least $400,000. When she dies, Julian inherits, and as his wife, half of that would be mine. Or was. We'll see how we can get all of it now." I kept scrolling. Veronica had opened 4 credit cards in Julian's name, maxing them out. She had sold the car Julian had purchased and told him it had been stolen. She had even attempted to take out a loan using my house as collateral, but had needed my signature, which I had refused to give years ago for a different, vague investment. That explained the monthly trips. They weren't for work. They were to meet Marcus in different cities, Vegas, Cabo, Phoenix, all paid for with the money Julian was literally killing himself to earn. I took pictures of everything. Every text, every document, every piece of financial evidence. Margaret was right. I needed to document the entirety of her deceit. That night during dinner, I decided to test the waters again. "What would you all like to do tomorrow?" "Go home," Leo answered automatically. "To which home?" I asked without blinking. "Your dad's house or Uncle Marcus's house?" Clara's fork clattered onto her plate. I don't know what you're talking about. Clara, sweetheart, I know this is hard, but I need you to be honest with me. Does Uncle Marcus live with you? No, well, sometimes. When Dad travels for work, he stays to take care of us. In the guest room, Finn let out a nervous giggle. No, Grandma. He sleeps in Mom and Dad's room, and he doesn't let us in. And they make weird noises. Leo jumped up from the table, furious. Shut up, Finn! Mom said not to say anything. And what else did your mother tell you not to say? It was Clara who finally broke. The tears started falling, silent and fast. That Dad is boring, that Uncle Marcus is more fun, that soon we're going to have a new house in Arizona with a pool, that we won't be poor like Dad anymore, that we won't end up like you, Grandma, living in an old, ugly house. I stood up and pulled her into my arms. For the first time in years, my granddaughter allowed the hug. And she clung to me, weeping, not like the hardened little robot Veronica had created, but like the terrified 10-year-old she actually was. Grandma, Leo whispered. And for the first time, there was no hostility in his voice. Does Dad know? No, my love. Your dad doesn't know anything. Are you going to tell him? I'm going to do something better, I promised, holding Clara tighter. I'm going to make sure that you are all safe, that your dad is safe, and that your mother, well, that your mother gets exactly what she deserves. That night, after I tucked the children into bed, and for the first time, not a single one of them protested, I called Julian. Hi, Mom. How are the kids? Veronica told me you offered to watch them. Offered. The pathological liar had twisted everything, even to him. They're fine, son. Listen, could you come over tomorrow after work? I need to discuss a major issue with the house. Is it urgent? Veronica asked me not to bother her on her work trip. It's about the foundation, I said, not a complete lie. It's starting to affect the structure. It could be very expensive. Okay, Mom. I'll be there around 7. I hung up and looked at the calendar. 12 days until Veronica's return. 12 days to dismantle a decade of lies, manipulation, and profound psychological abuse. But now I had something I didn't have before. 3 children who were starting to see the truth. And the truth, as they say, always comes out. Tomorrow the CPS worker would arrive. Julian would see the proof, and the entire fragile, false castle Veronica had built would begin to crumble. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in years, I had all the weapons I needed to win it. Do you wonder what Julian will do when he sees the extent of his wife's betrayal? Or how a single devastating truth will forever change the man I raised? The 3rd day began not with the quiet resolve I'd expected, but with a literal bang. At 5 in the morning, a sudden, acrid smell of burning plastic and smoke filled my old craftsman house. Grandma, the house is on fire! Clara shrieked from the hallway. I ran to the kitchen, grabbing the fire extinguisher I always keep mounted next to the pantry. Thank God for my lifelong obsession with preparedness. The source of the chaos was the living room fireplace, where Finn stood amidst a hazy cloud of gray smoke, laughing hysterically. He had found a box of novelty sparklers I kept for the 4th of July and somehow managed to light them indoors. A corner of my beloved antique Persian rug was smoldering, and the thick, suffocating smoke was everywhere. It's fun! Finn yelled, coughing, his small face exhilarated. Like the fire videos on my tablet. You could have burned the house down, Finn. So what? It's an old ugly house anyway. Mom said when you die, she's going to sell it and buy us a better one. There it was. The pure, unadulterated venom of Veronica coming from the mouth of my 7-year-old grandson. This time it didn't hurt me. It galvanized me. It was the fuel I needed. You know what, Finn? I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline rush as I extinguished the last smoldering patch of rug. You are absolutely right. It is an old house. Do you know why? Because in this house, I raised your father by myself after your grandfather died in the fishing accident. In this house, I sewed his clothes late into the night just to pay for his college education. In this ugly kitchen, I prepared 1,000 lunches all made with love, so your dad would never go to school hungry. The boy stopped laughing, his excitement draining away, replaced by confusion. And if your mother thinks she's going to get this house, I continued, looking directly at Leo and Clara, who had watched the whole scene in stunned silence, she is very mistaken, because yesterday I changed my will. I'm leaving everything to a foundation for orphaned children, children who would actually appreciate having a safe roof over their heads. You can't do that, Leo shouted, running towards me. That house is our inheritance. Mom says it's our right. Inheritance? I took a step back. You, who never visit me, who despise me, who treat me like a free servant, want an inheritance? I took out my phone and played the audio recording I had captured the night before during their confession at the dinner table. Their own voices, small and betraying, filled the room. Dad is boring. Uncle Marcus is more fun. We won't be poor like Dad anymore. The three of them stood petrified, listening to their own words. You recorded us? Clara was pale, trembling. I recorded everything, my girl. Every word, every confession, every lie, I confirmed. Because when your mother comes back and tries to turn everything against me, I am going to have undeniable proof. That was the moment Leo, the quiet 12-year-old, snapped. You meddling old hag! That's why Dad never visits you. That's why Mom hates you. You're just a bitter old woman who can't stand to see anyone happy. He started throwing things. The vase my own mother had given me. The picture frames on the shelf. My framed teaching diploma, all while screaming obscenities that no 12-year-old should know. I hate you. I wish you were dead. Clara joined the chaos. She ran to the kitchen cabinet and started systematically throwing my collection of ceramic plates onto the hardwood floor. If you don't give us Wi-Fi right now, we're going to destroy your whole house. Finn, not wanting to be excluded, grabbed my old photo albums, my only remaining connection to Daniel and Julian's childhood, and started tearing the pages. Photos of my wedding, of Julian as a baby, of my parents, pieces of my history scattering across the smoke-filled room like confetti. I stood silently in the middle of the hurricane, calm, observing. The tiny camera Margaret had installed in the smoke detector recorded every moment, every shriek, every act of destruction. After 20 minutes, the three children were exhausted, panting amidst the rubble of my living room. Are you finished? I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. They looked at each other, confused by my lack of reaction. Now, I continued, pointing to the mess, you are going to clean up every single piece of this mess, every shard of broken plate, every destroyed photograph. And while you do it, you're going to think about this. I paused, letting my words land with the full weight of 36 years of teaching authority. Your mother left you here because she doesn't love you. If she loved you, she wouldn't have gone to Las Vegas with Uncle Marcus. If she loved you, she wouldn't use you as weapons against your father. If she loved you, she wouldn't teach you to hate the only people who truly care about you. You don't care about us. Leo shouted, trying to regain his footing. Oh no! Who do you think convinced your father not to sell the house when he lost his job 3 years ago? Who lent him the money to pay your school tuition when Veronica spent the money on her trips? Who has been saving money for your college education since the day you were born? I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 small savings passbooks, bound together with a faded ribbon, one in each of their names. Leo, $4,500. Clara, $3,800. Finn, $20,500. Every single month, from my modest pension, I saved $100 for each of you. Since I couldn't see you, I figured I could at least secure your future. But you know what? I closed the passbooks with a snap. Tomorrow I'm going to the bank to close these accounts. I'm going to give that money to children who actually value the efforts of others. Leo grabbed his passbook with trembling hands. $4,500. For me? It was for you. Not anymore. It was Clara who broke first, the tough facade dissolving. Grandma, we didn't know. You didn't know? I challenged her gently. Or you didn't want to know? It's always easier to believe your mother's exciting lies than to think for yourselves, isn't it? At that precise moment, the doorbell rang. It was Clara, Margaret's friend from Child Protective Services. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance. I'm here about a call we received regarding possible child neglect." The children turned ashen. "Please come in," I said, gesturing to the wreckage. "As you can see, the children have just finished an episode." Clara, the CPS worker, observed the utter destruction, then pulled out her official camera and began taking pictures. "Did the children do this?" "Mom says it's their way of expressing themselves," Finn mumbled, quoting Veronica's permissive philosophy. "Your mother encourages them to destroy other people's property?" Clara noted in her pad. "Mom says Grandma is old and it doesn't matter what she thinks," Clara, my granddaughter, added quickly. The CPS worker took notes, her expression neutral. "And where is your mother now?" "In Las Vegas on a work trip," Leo recited automatically. "Work," I said, showing Clara the screenshot of Veronica and Marcus on the yacht, toasting. "Lots of work." Clara reviewed the documents I had ready, the printed WhatsApp conversations, the financial reports showing the $45,000 debt, the photos. Her face grew more and more serious. "Children, I need to speak with each of you separately." While she interviewed them, I quietly began picking up the pieces of my shattered photos. Each fragment was a memory, but now they didn't hurt me. Now I understood I wasn't losing the past. I was reclaiming the future. An hour later, Clara emerged from the interview room where she had spoken with Leo. "Mrs. Vance, these children are suffering from severe emotional neglect. The psychological manipulation is palpable. The oldest is displaying classic signs of depression and conduct disorder. The girl has chronic anxiety, and the little one is merely acting out what he has witnessed. This is a classic case of parental alienation. What can I do for now? Document everything, just as you have been. When the father comes, I need to speak with him. And when the mother returns, I'm going to have to open a formal investigation." After the CPS worker left, I found the 3 children sitting silently on the stairs. They no longer looked like the little tyrants who had arrived. They looked like what they really were: scared, abandoned children. "Are they going to take us away from our parents?" Finn asked, his voice trembling. I sat next to them on the step. "No, my love. No one is going to separate you from your father, but things are going to change. Change always hurts, but sometimes it is the only way to heal." "Grandma," Leo wouldn't meet my eye. "About Uncle Marcus. Dad is going to die of sadness if he finds out. No, my boy, your father is stronger than you think, and he deserves the truth. We all deserve the truth." That afternoon, while they cleaned up the enormous mess they had made, this time without a single protest, I heard Clara whisper to Leo, "What if Grandma is right? What if Mom really doesn't love us?" "Shut up," Leo replied, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Mom has to love us. She's our mom." But even he was doubting now. The armor of lies was finally cracking. That night, after dinner, Finn approached me with something in his hands. It was the torn photo of Julian on his graduation day, which he had tried to tape back together. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I tried to fix it." I hugged him, and for the first time since he arrived, my youngest grandson hugged me back. "We can fix a lot of things, Finn. But first, we have to accept that they're broken." In a few short hours, Julian would arrive. The real reconstruction would begin, stone by stone, truth by truth, until nothing was left of Veronica's castle of manipulation. Julian arrived at 7:15. He came straight from the construction site, his uniform stained with dust and concrete, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. When I saw him at the door, for a brief, aching moment, I saw the 8-year-old boy who used to hide his patched-up shoes from the other children. "Hi, Mom. Where are the kids?" Doing homework in the dining room. Julian, sit down. We need to talk. Is it about the foundation leak? Can I check it quickly? It's not the leak in the foundation, son, I said, pointing him toward the sofa. It's the leak in your marriage. He froze. What are you talking about? I placed the manila folder on the coffee table. Inside were the screenshots of Veronica's conversations with Marcus, the statements from the credit cards she had opened in his name, the Facebook photos of her work trip in Las Vegas. Julian took the papers with hands that shook violently. With each page he turned, his face seemed to age years. This has to be a mistake. Veronica is at a sales conference. Julian, my love, Veronica is in Las Vegas with her lover. The children know. They've known for months. The children? His voice broke on the single word. The Uncle Marcus who comes to take care of them when you travel. The one who sleeps in your bed. The one your children have had to endure in silence because their mother threatened them that you would die of sadness if you found out. I watched the exact moment my son shattered. He didn't cry or scream. He simply collapsed into the armchair as if all the bones had been removed from his body. I'm an idiot, he whispered, his voice full of self-loathing. A complete utter idiot. No, son. You are a good man who trusted the wrong person. But now you have to be strong. For your children. Dad. Leo stood at the entrance to the living room. He had heard everything. Julian looked up. For the first time in years, he truly saw his son. Not the spoiled, hostile child Veronica had created, but the terrified, vulnerable boy who desperately needed his father. Leo. Son. We already knew, Dad. We've known for a long time. Clara and Finn appeared behind their brother, the three of them standing at the threshold, as if afraid to take another step. Come here, Julian said, opening his arms. And for the first time, in God knows how long, I watched my grandchildren run to embrace their father. The four of them wept together, a sound that was both heartbreaking and profoundly healing, while I quietly went to make coffee. Sometimes, tears are the essential first step toward true healing. That night, after Julian had tucked the children in and we were alone, we began planning the next phase. Veronica had underestimated the retired teacher, but now the teacher was preparing to deliver a life-altering lesson. Julian took a vacation, his first in 4 years, and he practically moved into my house with the children. We immediately implemented what I called the Respect and Routine Project. First, schedules. Wake up at 7, a family breakfast at 8. Educational activities, lunch, free time earned through good behavior, dinner, and bed by 9. But at home, we go to sleep whenever we want, Clara protested the first morning. That's why you are the way you are, I replied, without malice. The brain needs routine to feel safe. Your safety, your sense of control was a lie. We are building the real one now. Second, responsibilities. Each child had age-appropriate chores. Leo helped me in the small garden. Clara worked with me in the kitchen. Finn was in charge of organizing the massive collection of old books and board games I'd accumulated over the years. This is exploitation, Leo muttered, dramatically trimming the rose bushes. No, this is family, Julian corrected him, his voice firm but kind. In a family, everyone contributes. Third, real consequences. If they didn't comply, there was no television. If they shouted, they had 10 minutes of quiet time in the hallway to think. If they broke something, they fixed it or paid for it out of their allowance. But most importantly, Julian and I started taking them to weekly family therapy sessions with a psychologist Margaret had recommended, Dr. Harrison. These children have been used as pawns in a sick, narcissistic game, Dr. Harrison told me after the second session. The mother has conditioned them to reject any authority other than her own, creating a dependency, but she, paradoxically, is constantly absent. It is a textbook case of parental alienation combined with severe emotional neglect. Can it be reversed? Julian asked, his voice filled with despair. With time, patience, boundaries, and a tremendous amount of unconditional love, yes, it can. But it will be a long process. And little by little, the impossible started to work. On the 5th day, Clara approached me while I was kneading bread dough. "Grandma, can you teach me how to make those snickerdoodle cookies you promised?" As we kneaded the dough, the conversation turned personal. "Grandma, why does Mom hate you so much?" "She doesn't hate me, my girl," I answered, punching down the dough. "She fears me. Fears you? Why? Because I represent everything she is not. I worked my whole life. I built this simple life with my hands, and I raised a son with good values. Veronica wants everything easy, fast, without effort or integrity. When someone like me exists, it reminds her that she chose the wrong path." "Is Mom a bad person?" I considered my answer carefully. "Your mom is lost. She made profoundly wrong decisions, and now she is so deeply buried in her lies that she doesn't know how to find her way out. But that doesn't excuse the harm she has done to all of you." On the 7th day, Leo approached me while I was mending a tear in Finn's shirt. "Grandma, can I ask you something private?" "Of course, my boy. Why did you never defend yourself? All these years when Mom spoke badly of you, why did you never say anything back?" "Out of cowardice," I admitted truthfully. "I thought keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, was more important than being right. It was a mistake. Sometimes silence isn't peace, Leo. It's complicity with abuse. I regret not acting sooner, but I do not regret acting now." On the 8th day, something truly extraordinary happened. Finn, my youngest grandson, the one most emotionally damaged by the neglect, brought me a drawing. It was a picture of our family, Julian, the 3 children, and me, standing tall in the center. Veronica was conspicuously absent. "And your mom?" I asked gently. "Mom is on a trip," he replied, using the same dismissive phrase she did. "She's always on a trip, but you're always here." That night, Julian and I had the conversation we should have had a decade ago. "Mom, I am so deeply sorry. I failed you as a son." "No, Julian, I failed you as a mother. I should have taught you to recognize the signs. I should have protected you better from that kind of selfishness. How did I not see what was happening to us? I knew the comments were cruel, but I thought, because love blinds us, son. And manipulators like her are experts at making us doubt our own perception of reality. What am I going to do when she comes back? That is exactly what we have been preparing for. I have a plan, and I did. With Margaret's help, I had contacted a highly recommended family law attorney specializing in parental alienation cases. With Clara, the CPS worker, we had a completed documented file. With Dr. Harrison, we had psychological evaluations of the children detailing the trauma. On the 9th day, the children did something that left me speechless. They decided to organize a dinner for Julian and me. They cooked under strict supervision, set the table with my best linens, and even created a simple centerpiece using flowers from my little garden. "It's to say thank you," Leo explained. "With no trace of the hostile boy who had arrived, thank you for not giving up on us." During dinner, Julian's phone buzzed. Veronica sent me a message. She says she'll be back in 4 days and expects the kids to be ready for her. "Ready for what?" Clara asked, instantly tense. Julian looked at me. It was time to tell them. "Kids, when your mother comes back, things are going to change drastically. I am filing for divorce. I expected tears, protests, drama. Instead, Finn asked, with the simple logic of a child, "Are we still going to be able to come to Grandma's house?" "You are going to live with me," Julian said, his eyes tearing up. "And you will see your grandma every single day if you want. She is part of our family now, officially. And Mom?" Leo tried to sound indifferent, but I saw the pain flash in his eyes. "Your mother will have to make her own decisions," Julian answered, "based on the consequences of her actions. But no matter what happens, you are going to be safe, I promise you." That night, as I tucked Finn into his bed, he told me, "Grandma, you know what? I don't miss the tablet anymore. It was a small miracle. But big changes always start with small miracles." We had 4 days left until Veronica's return, 4 days to finish preparing everything. Because when she walked through that door, she wouldn't find the emotionally abandoned children she had left, nor the submissive, easily manipulated mother-in-law she expected. She would find a united, strong family ready for battle, and I, the old, retired teacher who, according to her, did nothing, was about to teach her the most important lesson of her life: never, ever underestimate the power of true love and truth over toxic manipulation. Do you think a narcissist like Veronica will truly accept defeat? Or is she already planning her final, most desperate move to reclaim her power and the children she sees as assets? The 10th day was when the ground truly shifted beneath us. Clara came into my room at 6 in the morning, her eyes red, her small body trembling. She climbed into my bed and hugged me fiercely, something she hadn't dared to do before. "Grandma, I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Something I haven't even told Dad." "What is it, my girl?" I asked, pulling her close. Mom has another phone, one Dad doesn't know about. She hides it in her secret compartment inside her vanity," she trailed off, her breathing ragged. "I saw it by accident one day, and she wasn't mad. She just took it and looked really scared." "And what did you see, Clara?" "Photos. Lots of photos of her with Uncle Marcus, of course. But also there were documents, papers from a bank in Arizona, and something about a house she bought there. She was planning to move everything." My heart stopped beating, replaced by a cold dread. A house in Arizona? Yes, and there was more. An email from a lawyer about custody. "Mom wants to take us to live in Phoenix with Uncle Marcus." It said something about how the U.S. doesn't have an extradition treaty for civil cases or something like that. My God. Veronica wasn't just planning to leave Julian. She was planning to commit full-blown parental kidnapping, to steal the children and vanish into another state, leveraging some legal loophole. She saw my grandchildren as portable assets to secure her new, luxurious life. "Is there anything else I should know, Clara? Anything at all?" Clara hesitated, then reached into the pocket of her pajamas. Her small fingers pulled out a tiny silver USB drive. "I copied everything, Grandma. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I just knew that someday someone would need to see it." I hugged her tightly, my throat constricting with tears. My 10-year-old granddaughter had been forced to carry this terrifying secret alone, proving herself braver and more perceptive than the adults who were supposed to protect her. I plugged the USB into my old desktop computer. What we found was devastating, a meticulous blueprint for the complete destruction of my family. Not only was there evidence of the house in Phoenix, purchased in Marcus's name with money Veronica had been siphoning from Julian's business and their joint accounts for 2 years, but there was a detailed 5-phase exit strategy. Phase 1. Convince Julian that I need a 2-week training trip to Las Vegas. Phase 2. During my absence, Marcus will empty the house of all valuables, jewelry, electronics, antique furniture. Phase 3. Upon my return, I will provoke a fight with the old woman. I'll make it look like she mistreated the children or caused them emotional distress. Phase 4. I will use that manufactured evidence to justify leaving with the children immediately for their safety and head straight for the Arizona property. Phase 5. Once in Phoenix, there's no turning back. We file for divorce there, and Julian's access to the children will be minimal. But the worst was in an audio file, a conversation between Veronica and Marcus. I closed my eyes as Veronica's voice filled the room, cold and utterly devoid of maternal feeling. "I don't care if the brats cry for their dad," she could be heard saying. "They'll forget him in 2 months. Besides, Julian is so pathetic he won't even fight. And if he does, I have edited videos that make it look like he hits Leo. Technology works miracles, my friend." Clara was openly weeping, clutching my hand. "Was Mom really going to say that Dad hit us?" "Your mother was willing to do anything to get her way," I confirmed, my voice shaking with cold fury. "To get money, to get Marcus, to destroy your father? But Julian has never laid a hand on any of you, has he?" "Never," Clara whispered. "I know, my love. That is why I've been recording everything since you arrived, to protect you and your father from these exact lies." Just then, Leo walked in. "What are you guys talking about? Why are you crying?" Clara, through her tears, told her brother everything: the USB drive, the house in Phoenix, the edited videos. I saw a pure, terrifying fury rise in my eldest grandson's eyes. "I'm going to kill her," Leo spat out, his hands clenching into fists. "No, Leo. You are not going to do anything violent," I cut him off, my voice sharp and commanding. "That is exactly what she wants. A bad reaction that she can twist and use against you. We are going to be smarter than her." "How? How are we smarter?" "With the truth," I said, pointing to the screen, "and with the law on our side." I immediately called Mr. Peterson, the family law attorney Margaret had recommended. When I explained the newest revelation, the planned abduction, the out-of-state property, the fabricated abuse claims, his usual calm tone turned serious. "Mrs. Vance, you and Julian need to be in my office immediately," he instructed. "We are moving from a standard divorce filing to a full-scale emergency protective and custody order. This is a very serious matter. We need to petition the court for a warrant against her based on the financial fraud and the intent to commit international parental kidnapping." While we waited for Julian, who was out running an errand, Finn joined us in the sunroom. "Why is everyone so sad?" "We are not sad, my love," I told him, holding his small hand. "We are preparing to protect our family." Finn thought for a moment. Then he said something that shattered my heart completely. "Grandma, I know Mom doesn't love me." "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" "Once I heard her tell Uncle Marcus that I was a mistake. That if it weren't for me, she would already be free. 7 years old. My 7-year-old grandson had heard his own mother call him a mistake. "Finn, look at me," I said, kneeling down so we were eye to eye. "You are not a mistake. You are a gift. A beautiful, wonderful gift. And if your mother cannot see that, it is her loss, not yours." "Then why did she have me?" Leo answered before I could find the words. "To trap Dad. Mom got pregnant with you right when Dad had asked for a divorce the first time." Clara, stunned, asked, "Dad wanted a divorce before?" "Yes," Leo confirmed, his voice low. 3 years ago, I heard them fighting. Dad had found out that Mom had spent Grandpa Daniel's insurance money on a huge shopping spree with her friends. But then Mom told him she was pregnant with you, Finn, and Dad stayed. Daniel's life insurance. I never knew the exact amount, but Julian had told me he was saving it for the children's college education. Now I knew where it had gone. Into Veronica's pocket, spent on frivolous luxury, concealed by a child. Julian arrived moments later, his face distraught. "Mom, I went to the bank like you asked. Veronica emptied our savings account yesterday. $38,000. Everything we had saved in 10 years. It's all gone." "Sit down, son," I said, guiding him to the sofa. "There is more. Much more." I showed him the contents of the USB drive, the documents, the audio files, the malicious plan. With each piece of evidence, Julian seemed to shrink, the reality of his decade-long delusion finally overwhelming him. How could I have been so blind? he mumbled, rubbing his temples. Dad, Leo said, sitting next to him, placing a small hand on his arm. It's not your fault. Mom is a very good liar. She fooled all of us. But I'm their father, Julian insisted, tears welling up in his exhausted eyes. I should have protected them. You're protecting us now, Clara countered with surprising clarity. That's what matters. Mr. Peterson arrived shortly after. He was a man in his 60s with a stern bulldog face, but surprisingly kind eyes. With all this evidence, Mr. Miller, we can not only prevent her from taking the children, but we can also obtain a temporary restraining order and a full custody transfer. Attempted parental kidnapping and financial fraud are serious felonies. We are talking about jail time. I don't want her to go to jail, Julian said, his voice raw. I just want my kids to be safe. Dad, she was going to accuse you of hitting us, Leo reminded him, his voice rising in panic. She was going to destroy you. Still, I don't want my children to witness their mother being arrested. Mr. Peterson nodded, understanding the complexity of his client's emotions. I understand, Mr. Miller. We can negotiate. We will offer a trade. She signs over full, sole custody, returns the money, or signs over the title to your jointly owned house to you, and there are no criminal charges. But we need to act fast. She arrives in 3 days. Perfect, I confirmed, my gaze meeting Julian's. Enough time to prepare everything. After the lawyer left, we all sat in the sunroom, my small, humble room that had borne witness to so much history and so many secrets. Kids, Julian began, his voice thick with emotion. I want you to know that no matter what happens with your mom, I will always be here. And so will your grandma. We are a team. Is Mom going to go to jail? Finn asked, rubbing his eyes. We don't know, sweetheart. But she's going to have to face the consequences of her actions. That's a natural law. Are we going to see her again? Clara asked, attempting to sound indifferent, but the pain was clearly visible. It was her mother, after all. That will depend on her, Clara, and on what the judge decides is best for all of you. That evening, as we ate the simple chili I had prepared with Clara's help, Leo said something that filled me with pride. Grandma, thank you for not giving up, for fighting for us when we weren't even fighting for ourselves. I will always fight for you, I promised, reaching across the table to touch his arm. Always. You know, Clara added, a genuine smile spreading across her face. These have been the best days of my life. For the first time, I feel like I'm in a real family. Me too, Finn mumbled, his mouth full of chili. And Grandma's food isn't horrible. It's the best in the world, we laughed. For the first time in years, we laughed as a real family. But while the children watched a movie in the living room, Julian and I had a more serious conversation in the kitchen. Mom, I'm scared, Julian admitted, stacking the dinner plates. What if Veronica becomes violent? What if she tries to take the kids by force? That's why we have the plan, Julian. The day she arrives, the children will be at Margaret's house. The police will be alerted and waiting nearby. Mr. Peterson will be present. She will not be alone with them for a single minute. And what if the kids miss her later? What if they hate me for separating them from their mother? The children will miss the mother they never had, I corrected him gently. Not the one they do have. And with therapy and love, they will heal. We will all heal. I looked into the living room, where my grandchildren were curled up on the sofa, quiet and secure. In 10 days they had changed so much. They were no longer the broken, hostile tyrants who had arrived. They were simply children who needed love and structure. We had 3 days left until Veronica's return. 3 days to legally protect these children, because what Veronica didn't know was that while she was enjoying her lavish deception in Las Vegas, an army had risen here in Seattle. An army built on love, structure, truth, and the unwavering force of justice. And we were ready for war. Do you believe, Julian, still blinded by years of loyalty and guilt, will find the resolve to stand up to Veronica's inevitable emotional manipulation during the final confrontation? The last 3 days before Veronica's return were simultaneously the most intense and, oddly, the most beautiful of my life. It was as if the universe had granted us this small, contained period of grace to build the foundation of a real family that should have existed all along. The 11th day dawned rainy and gray, a typical Seattle morning. While I was making breakfast, my famous cinnamon rolls, requested by popular demand, I found Leo in the living room, huddled over a photo album I had managed to rescue and repair from the destruction of the first day. "That's Dad." He pointed to a faded, slightly water-damaged photo of Julian at his age. He was holding a small trophy. "What was that for?" "Yes, that's him," I smiled, looking over his shoulder. He had just won the state regional science fair competition. Look at the pride on his face. He looks so young and happy. "He looks like me," Leo whispered, tracing the outline of his father's face with a tentative finger. "No, my boy, you look like him," I corrected gently. "And not just physically. You have his intelligence, his kindness, his nobility. You had just buried it under a lot of pain and confusion." Leo turned the page. There I was, 35 years old, looking younger and slightly more severe, surrounded by my first group of 6th grade students. "You looked happy, Grandma." I was happy. "Teaching was my passion," I affirmed. "Just like cooking, just like loving all of you." "Then why did you let Mom push you away from us?" I sat next to him, the worn sofa cushions sighing beneath my weight. "Out of cowardice, Leo. I thought that if I didn't make waves, if I just stayed quiet and accommodating, one day she would change, or she would let me back in. But abusers don't change with submission. They get stronger." Leo looked at me, his troubled brown eyes wide. "Grandma, do you think I'm like Mom?" "Sometimes I feel so much rage inside." "Rage doesn't make you bad, Leo. What you do with it is what defines who you are," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "Your mother uses her rage to harm others. You can choose to use it to protect, to build, to change what is wrong. You have the choice now." That morning, we did something truly special. I decided to teach them how to make my husband Daniel's famous salmon chowder, a complex recipe with 8 different ingredients and a roux that required constant stirring. It was a ritual I had waited years to share with them. "Why is it so complicated?" Clara asked, wrinkling her nose as she ground the spices in my old stone mortar and pestle. "Because the best things in life require time, patience, and love, Clara. There are no shortcuts for what is truly worthwhile," I explained. Finn was in charge of chopping the parsley and toasting the spices. His little face, usually contorted with demands, was now a portrait of total, serious concentration. "It smells like a holiday," he said. "It smells like tradition, Finn," I corrected him. "It smells like history. Your great-grandfather Daniel taught me this recipe. He survived a storm that took his boat, and now it lives on in us." "Are we history?" Finn seemed genuinely amazed by the idea. "We are living history, my love. Each of us carries the stories and strength of those who came before us," I confirmed. While we cooked, Julian worked tirelessly at the dining room table with Mr. Peterson's detailed legal documents, signing papers, and preparing the entire legal strategy. From time to time, he would glance into the kitchen and watch us with a sad, hopeful smile. "Dad seems different," Clara observed. "Your dad is waking up from a very long, toxic dream," I explained. "It hurts to wake up, but it is necessary." That afternoon, Dr. Harrison, the family psychologist, arrived for a special, crucial family session. "I want each of you to write a letter to Veronica," she instructed. Not to send it, but to get out everything you are carrying inside, all the anger, the sadness, the fear. Leo wrote 3 full pages of fury and betrayal. Clara wrote 1 page filled with questions and desperate confusion. Finn, the youngest, drew his mother as a sharp-toothed monster with suitcases instead of hands. Julian wrote only 1 line. I forgive you, but I will not allow you to cause any more harm. And I wrote, I failed as a mother-in-law by not stopping you sooner. I will not fail as a grandmother. Now, the doctor said, her voice soft but firm. I want you all to burn them. Let go of the pain. It's time to release the hold she has on your emotions. In the backyard, under the gentle, drizzling rain, we burned the letters in a heavy clay pot. As the paper curled and turned to ash, Finn asked, his voice filled with childlike awe, Are we free now? Now we begin to be free, Dr. Harrison replied. The fire is only the start. The 12th day was all about practical legal preparation. Margaret arrived with Clara, the CPS worker. The day Veronica arrives, the children will be at my house, Margaret explained. It's better they don't witness the initial confrontation. It's too volatile. But I want to see Mom's face when she realizes we know everything, Leo protested, the desire for vengeance still strong within him. No, my love, I intervened firmly. Revenge is not our goal. Protection is. Your safety is paramount. Clara, the CPS worker, reviewed all the legal documents and our evidence file. With this overwhelming documentation, the financial fraud, the recorded intent to kidnap, the psychological evaluations, we can request emergency, sole custody for Julian. Veronica won't be able to get near the children without strict judicial supervision. What if she comes with that Marcus guy? Julian asked, still worried. We'll have an unmarked patrol car alerted and waiting nearby, Clara assured him. Any sign of physical violence? Any attempt to remove the children, and they will intervene immediately. That night, after the children were asleep, I found Julian out in the garden, looking up at the cloudy sky where no stars were visible. What are you thinking about, son? About Dad, he admitted. Do you think he would be disappointed in me? For allowing this to happen to his son and his grandchildren? Your father would be immensely proud, Julian, I said, placing a warm hand on his cold cheek. Proud that you are finally doing the right thing. It took you a long time to see the truth, but you got there. That's what counts. Mom, how did you manage to raise a son alone? How did you find the strength for all of it? I didn't find it, Julian, I confessed. I built it. Day by day, decision by decision, in quiet acts of sacrifice, just like you are building your strength now. The 13th day, the very last day before Veronica's return, was dedicated to pure, unadulterated family time. We decided to have a real family excursion. We went to Discovery Park, the immense urban wilderness park where I used to take Julian when he was a little boy. The children ran, played in the tall grass, and got deliciously dirty. For the first time in years, I saw them simply being carefree children. Grandma, look! Finn shouted, having climbed the tallest, gnarled old maple tree. I can see the whole city! Be careful! I instinctively started to shout, worried about his safety, but Julian stopped me. Let him, Mom. He needs to feel brave. Clara and I sat on a bench, sharing a packet of warm, sugared peanuts. Grandma, when Mom comes back, is all of this going to end? No, my girl. This is just beginning, I said, smiling faintly. What's going to end is the fear, the manipulation, the lies. That chapter is closing. What if Mom cries? Whenever she cries, Dad always forgives her for everything, Clara pointed out, with the painful awareness of a child who has observed patterns of abuse. Not this time, I promised. This time, your dad has something stronger than your mom's manipulation. What? The truth. And all three of you to protect. Leo approached us with a bag of bright blue cotton candy. I spent my entire allowance on this, but it was worth it, he announced, handing us each a sticky piece. That's my grandson, I said, pulling him close. Learning that giving something worthwhile is far more valuable than receiving. As the sun began to set over the Puget Sound, casting long shadows, we returned home, exhausted but happy. While I was putting the final touches on a simple dinner, I heard the children talking quietly in the living room. Do you remember when Mom used to bring us here? Finn asked, clearly confusing a distant memory with the present one. Mom never brought us here, Leo replied, stating the brutal fact. Mom never took us anywhere that wasn't the mall, Clara confirmed. But Grandma did. In just 13 days, Grandma has given us more than Mom has in years. My heart swelled with a mixture of profound love and overwhelming sadness. During dinner, Julian made his final announcement. Tomorrow is going to be a very difficult day, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, we are a family, and real families protect each other. Is Mom not family? Finn asked, utterly confused. Mom is your biological mother. But family? Julian paused, meeting his son's gaze with unwavering honesty. Family is who is here when things get tough. Family is who loves you unconditionally. Then Grandma is more family than Mom, Finn concluded with the simple, heartbreaking logic of a child. That night, as I tucked them into their separate beds, each one offered a final, cherished farewell. Leo, Grandma, thank you for not giving up on me, even though I was so horrible to you. Clara, Grandma, I want to be like you when I grow up, strong and brave. Finn, Grandma, can I call you Mama Eleanor? I already have a mom, but I need a real mom. I couldn't hold back the tears. You can call me whatever you want, my loves, I choked out, kissing his forehead. I will always be your grandmother who loves you. Julian and I stayed in the kitchen late, going over the plan one last time. At 10 in the morning, I take the kids to Margaret's house. At 11, Mr. Peterson arrives. At 11:30, the patrol car will be positioned on the corner, I recited. Veronica said she arrives at noon, and we will be ready. Before sleeping, I looked at the photos of these 13 days I had taken with my old phone. The transformation was impressive. From 3 broken and hostile children to 3 children healing, laughing and functioning as a family. Tomorrow, Veronica would return, expecting to find her submissive mother-in-law and her emotionally abandoned children. Instead, she would find the cold, hard consequences of her actions. She would find that true love is always stronger than manipulation. She would find that the family she had despised had become an impenetrable wall, protecting the children she had only ever used as weapons. And I, the old retired teacher, was ready to teach the final lesson, the most important one, the definitive one. It was 11:58 in the morning. Julian and I were seated in the living room, with Mr. Peterson, the lawyer, beside us. The legal documents were spread across the coffee table like soldiers, ready for battle. My phone showed a message from Margaret. The kids are fine, playing in the yard. They don't suspect a thing. At 12:03, we heard the distinct, loud engine of Veronica's massive SUV pull up and shut off outside. My heart was hammering so hard I was certain Julian could hear it. "Calm down, Mom," he said, reaching for my hand. "She has no power over us anymore." The front door opened without a knock. Classic Veronica, sweeping in as if she owned the place. She was deeply tanned, wearing a new gaudy silk dress that likely cost more than my monthly pension, and dragging a huge designer suitcase. "Ugh, it's so hot," she exclaimed, not even bothering to look at us at first. "Julian, what are you doing here? You should be at work. Where are the kids? I hope you haven't spoiled them, Eleanor. It's hard enough for me to—" She stopped dead when she finally noticed the lawyer. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice losing its forced sweetness. Julian stood up. His posture was straight, his voice firm and steady, nothing like the defeated man who had arrived 13 days ago. "We need to talk, Veronica." "Talk about what?" "I'm exhausted from the trip. The kids and I are going home." "The kids aren't here," I said, my voice cutting through her demand, perfectly calm. "And they're not going anywhere with you." Her face instantly changed. The mask of polished sweetness cracked wide open. "Excuse me, Julian. What exactly does this mean?" Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Miller, I'm Mr. Peterson. I represent Mr. Miller in the divorce and emergency custody proceedings he has initiated." "Divorce?" She let out a strained, nervous laugh. "Julian, honey, what did your mother do to you now? You know she's old and always makes things up." "No, Veronica." Julian took out his phone and played the audio file from the USB drive. It was her own voice. "The brats get in my way. As soon as I can, I'll get rid of them. Julian is such an idiot. He won't even notice." The color drained from Veronica's tanned face. That's edited. It's illegal to record someone without their consent." "It is also illegal," the lawyer interjected smoothly, "to open credit cards in your husband's name without his knowledge. $45,000 in debt, ma'am." "I don't know what you're talking about." Julian placed the bank statements and the credit reports on the coffee table. 4 maxed-out cards, Veronica, all meticulously documented. "We also have," I continued, meeting her venomous gaze, "evidence of the house in Phoenix. The one you bought with Marcus using the money you stole from your joint savings account." "I didn't steal anything. It's joint money, which you emptied without your husband's consent to purchase a property in your lover's name, ma'am," Mr. Peterson specified, his voice hard. "That is marital fraud." Veronica looked at me, her eyes burning with pure, unadulterated hatred. This is all your fault, you meddling old woman. You always wanted to separate me from Julian." "No, Veronica," I replied with quiet finality. "You separated yourself. I just documented your crimes." "Crimes? Please, what are you going to do? Sue me for being unhappy in my marriage?" "No," Mr. Peterson said, pulling out a final, official-looking document. "For attempted international parental kidnapping. We have your complete plan to take the children to Phoenix without paternal consent." Veronica staggered back, forced to grab the back of the sofa for support. "The children are mine! I gave birth to them." "Children are not property, Veronica," I replied, standing up to face her fully. "And after 13 days with me, they made a decision. What did you do to them? Did you brainwash them? This is parental alienation." Julian let out a bitter, exhausted laugh. "Parental alienation? Seriously? The woman who told our children their grandmother was a dirty, poor, bitter old woman is talking about alienation? I want to see my children now." "No." Julian's voice was pure steel, completely new to her. "First, we're going to establish the rules." Mr. Peterson opened his briefcase. "Ma'am, you have exactly 2 options. First, you accept the divorce, waive all custody rights, return the stolen money, or sign over all claims to the marital home, and leave without making a scene. In return, we do not press criminal charges. The second option, we fight this in court. With the evidence we have, you will not only lose the children, you will also face felony charges for fraud, attempted kidnapping, and documented psychological abuse. That carries a mandatory sentence of 3 to 5 years in prison. Veronica collapsed onto the sofa, truly defeated for the first time since I'd known her. For a moment, her mask dropped entirely, and what I saw was pathetic. An empty, selfish woman who had gambled her entire life on a foundation of lies and lost everything. "You can't do this to me," she whimpered, her voice thin. "I have rights." "The children also have rights," I countered. "The right not to be manipulated, used, and emotionally abandoned. I never abandoned them." "Oh, no? How many trips have you taken this year, Veronica?" 18? We have it meticulously documented. 18 times you left your children to be with Marcus. I took out my phone and showed her the Facebook album again. Her and Marcus toasting on expensive yachts and beaches, while her children were left alone. The children know everything, Veronica. They know about Uncle Marcus. They know he sleeps in their father's bed when he's not there. They know you call them the brats. They know you were planning to steal them to Phoenix. I want to talk to them." "Not until you sign the papers," Julian said, his eyes cold and resolved. Veronica pulled out her phone, her hands shaking violently. "I'm going to call Marcus. He's a lawyer. He'll defend me." "Go ahead," Mr. Peterson said calmly. "But I should inform you that Marcus has already been notified that he is implicated in a massive financial fraud case. I doubt he wants to dig himself in any deeper." She dialed once, twice, 3 times. Marcus didn't answer. "He abandoned me," she whispered, her face twisting into a mask of shock and self-pity. "Just like you abandoned your family, Veronica," I said. "This isn't over. I will get my children back. I will, Mom." We all turned. Clara stood at the living room entrance, pale but determined. She had snuck away from Margaret's house. "My love." Veronica ran towards her, arms outstretched, but Clara stepped back, holding up her hands. "Don't touch me! Clara, my baby! What did they do to you? What did this old woman tell you?" "Grandma didn't tell me anything," Clara stated, her voice clear. "You said it all. In your messages with Uncle Marcus, in your lies, in every time you left us. I was working to give you a better life." "No, you were traveling with your lover while we thought we were orphans with living parents," she countered. Leo and Finn appeared behind their sister. Margaret arrived moments later, frantic. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. They snuck out when I wasn't looking." "It's okay, Margaret," I said softly. "Maybe they needed to do this." Veronica tried to approach Leo. "Son, my love, your sister is confused." "No, Mom," Leo said, his voice surprisingly firm. "You're the one who's confused if you think we're going back with you. You're the one who calls us the brats." "I am your mother." "A mother doesn't call her son a mistake," Finn said in his small voice. "I heard you. You told Uncle Marcus I was a mistake." Veronica turned ghost white. "No, I didn't. You're making that up. A mother doesn't steal her children's college money," Leo added. "A mother doesn't use us as an excuse for her lies," Clara continued. "A mother protects us," the 3 of them said in unison. "Like Grandma does," Leo concluded, his voice full of pure conviction. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the old wall clock ticking, the low hum of the refrigerator, and Veronica's ragged, defeated breathing. "You're going to pay for this." "Eleanor," she finally hissed, her voice filled with impotent rage. "You don't know who you're messing with." "I know exactly who I'm messing with," I replied, my gaze unwavering. "A narcissist who mistook kindness for weakness." "But it's over, Veronica. Sign the papers and go." Julian stepped forward. "Then we'll see you in court. And believe me, with what we have, you won't just lose the children, you'll lose everything." Veronica looked at her children one last time. For a brief moment, it looked like she might cry. But narcissists don't cry for others, only for their own lost power. She snatched the papers, signed them with furious, angry strokes, and threw the pen on the table. "I hope you're happy. You've just taken a mother away from these children." "No," Finn replied with a maturity that belied his 7 years. "We just gained a family." Veronica stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The engine of her SUV roared and then faded away into the distance, taking a decade of toxicity with it. The children ran to hug their father. The 4 of them cried, wrapped in a single embrace, while I went to make chamomile tea for everyone. "Is she gone for good?" Clara asked, her voice small. "I don't know," Julian answered honestly. "But if she comes back, it will be on our terms, not hers. And if she doesn't come back—" Finn's voice trembled slightly. I sat with them on the floor, something I hadn't done since Julian was a child. "If she doesn't come back, we will move on. Because you don't beg for love, my children. Love is given freely, or it isn't love at all." Leo looked at me, a tear tracing a clean path through the dirt on his cheek. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, my boy. For the first time in 10 years, this family is free." That night, as we ate the warming chowder we had prepared days before, Julian raised his glass of iced tea. "To Mom, to the woman who saved us all, to Grandma," the children shouted, but I raised my glass to something else entirely. To the truth, because in the end, the truth always wins. And as I looked at my real family, gathered around my humble table, I knew that all the pain and all the sacrifice had been profoundly worth it. The retired teacher had taught her last and most important lesson. It is never too late to stand up for what you love. Wait until you hear how Veronica attempts her final, desperate counterattack, and how the children, now armed with the truth, react to her calculated deception. 3 weeks. 3 weeks had passed since Veronica slammed my door shut, carrying her venom and her expensive luggage out of our lives. 3 weeks of quiet, 3 weeks of routine, 3 weeks of pure, uninterrupted peace, my old house in Seattle, usually an echo chamber for one retired woman, was now constantly filled with the sound of laughter, quiet conversation, and the soft, comforting clutter of a real family living together. Julian was staying with me, getting up early every morning to prepare the children's breakfast before heading to his construction site. The children were thriving under the new regimen. Leo, my eldest grandson, had started reading physical books again, finding solace in the fantasy novels I kept stored in the attic. Clara was spending hours with me in the kitchen, carefully measuring ingredients and perfecting my snickerdoodles. Finn, the youngest, had stopped wetting the bed and was now obsessed with helping Julian in the garden, planting seeds and watering the rose bushes. We were finally healing. That period of peace, however, was violently shattered one Thursday afternoon. It was around 4 o'clock. I was in the backyard with the children, teaching them how to plant my heirloom tomato starters, a sacred ritual I usually performed alone. We heard voices from the front entrance, sharp and demanding, cutting through the calm afternoon air. "I demand to see my children. I have a court order." Veronica's voice, harsh and unrecognizable, echoed from the porch. Julian was at work. We were alone. But I was no longer the same helpless woman who had wept over a broken dollhouse years before. "Kids, go inside the house now," I instructed, my voice low and firm. "Go into the sunroom and don't come out for any reason." "But Grandma," Leo began, "now." They obeyed instantly. The transformation in their obedience was astonishing, a testament to the power of clear, consistent boundaries. From the sunroom window, 3 terrified but wide-eyed little faces watched. At the entrance stood Veronica, flanked by 2 people. The stocky man I recognized instantly as Marcus, and a woman in a severe blazer holding an official-looking folder. "Mrs. Vance," the woman introduced herself, her tone professionally detached. "I'm Patricia Wells from the state's Social Services Department. We received a report of severe child abuse and neglect against you and your son, Mr. Julian Miller." "Of course," This was Veronica's inevitable, desperate counterattack. If she couldn't win with truth, she would try to win with lies and official bureaucracy. And I, Marcus interjected, stepping forward with a sneer, also reported that your son is an alcoholic and violent, and that you are covering up his substance abuse. We have multiple witnesses who will confirm everything. Witnesses. I laughed, a short, cold sound that surprised even myself. How much did you pay them, Marcus? Or did you just promise them a free trip to Las Vegas? Patricia, the social worker, seemed uncomfortable with the open hostility. Ma'am, I need to speak with the children alone, and I need to conduct a full inspection of the premises. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the house. You are welcome to check anything you like. But first, can I show you something that might provide necessary context? I took out my phone and played the video I had secretly recorded on day 3, the moment the children destroyed my living room in a coordinated tantrum. The video clearly showed Leo screaming obscenities, Clara throwing plates, and Finn tearing my photo albums, all while I stood perfectly calm, refusing to engage in their violence. This is what Veronica calls abuse, I explained, letting the raw sound of their destructive rage fill the air. Refusing to allow children to destroy my property, refusing to respond to violence with violence. Ask them, Ms. Wells, ask them why they were driven to this level of desperation. Patricia watched the footage intently, her expression hardening. The children did that. Yes, ask them why, and ask them who taught them that their behavior was acceptable. That doesn't prove anything. Veronica shrieked, her control starting to fray. This old woman has them threatened. She's terrorizing them. At that precise, dramatic moment, Julian's truck pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on the gravel. He had left work early. Stepping out behind him was Mr. Peterson, the lawyer, and to my immense surprise and relief, Clara, the social worker from Child Protective Services, who had initially interviewed the children. Patricia. Clara, the CPS worker, greeted her colleague, her voice carrying an official weight. What are you doing here? We received a report, Patricia began. Yes, we were notified, Clara interrupted. That's why I came. This family has been under my active supervision for 3 weeks. I have a complete open file here. Clara pulled out a thick, intimidating folder, our file. Psychological evaluations of the children, detailed therapy reports, documented evidence of emotional neglect by the biological mother, attempted out-of-state parental kidnapping, financial fraud. That is false, Veronica shouted, her eyes wild, her body language completely out of control. We also have this, Julian said, his voice now confident and commanding. He took out his own phone. Recordings of Veronica admitting the reports are false. He pressed play. It was a conversation between Veronica and Marcus from that very morning, recorded by Marcus himself, who was trying to save his own skin by turning informant. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, Veronica's recorded voice rasped. I just need social services to believe me for an hour to get the brats back. With them in my possession, Julian will give me whatever I want. Marcus went pale, sweating profusely. You told me you didn't know I was recording, he whimpered. You imbecile. Veronica slapped him hard across the face, the sound echoing across the quiet yard. Patricia, the investigating social worker, was visibly stunned. Mrs. Vance, this is extremely serious. Filing false child abuse reports is a felony. I want to talk to my children, Veronica demanded, ignoring the evidence, resorting to pure maternal performance. Talk to them, I said, stepping back from the porch. But you will talk to them right here. Kids, you can come out now. The 3 children, holding hands, walked out onto the porch. They stopped 10 feet from their mother. Tell this woman the truth, children, Veronica ordered, pointing at Patricia. Tell her how your grandmother abuses you. Grandma taught us how to cook, Finn said simply. Grandma listens to us, Clara added. Grandma loves us, Leo concluded, his voice ringing with conviction. You just use us. She brainwashed you. Veronica screamed, turning on Clara, the CPS worker. This is parental alienation. Clara intervened, stepping between Veronica and the children. Mrs. Miller, in my 20 years of experience, I have never seen such a clear case of projection. You are accusing others of exactly what you yourself are doing. I have something else to show, I said, walking into the house. I came back out holding a large, sturdy box. These are all the cards, drawings, and letters the children made for me over the years that you threw into the trash. I rescued them from the can when I came to visit you. Look at the dates. Patricia reviewed the contents of the box. Dozens of discarded expressions of childhood love for my grandma that I can't see, she read aloud from a faded letter from Clara 2 years earlier. I miss you, but Mom says you're busy. There's also this, Julian added, pulling out an envelope. The results from the private investigator I hired. Veronica has been living a double life, not just with Marcus. She has active profiles on 3 different online dating apps. Marcus exploded. What? You told me I was the only one. You promised me you loved me. Shut up, you idiot. Veronica snapped, cornered, defeated, and exposed on all sides. Patricia closed her folder. I have seen enough. Not only is there zero evidence of abuse by Mrs. Vance or Mr. Miller, but there is clear, documented evidence of manipulation, fraud, and the filing of false reports by Mrs. Veronica Miller. Furthermore, Clara, the CPS worker, added, her voice cold and professional, I am going to recommend that the mother's future visits, if any, be fully supervised at a neutral location and that the children continue intensive therapy. You are facing criminal investigation, Mrs. Miller. You can't do this. Veronica was weeping now, but the tears were transparent, self-pitying rage. Yes, we can, Mr. Peterson stated, stepping forward. And there's more. Mrs. Miller, you are being sued for fraud. The banks have already been notified of the fraudulent credit cards. Veronica looked at me with a hatred so pure it could melt steel. You! This is all your fault! No, Veronica, I said, taking a step closer, my eyes locked on hers. I only brought to light what you chose to do in the darkness. It was then that Marcus spoke, realizing his fate was sealed. I'm leaving. Veronica, you lose. I'm not going down with you. You can't leave me. Veronica wailed, clutching at his arm. You promised we would be together. You promised you were rich, that the house in Phoenix was yours. It was all a lie. Marcus ripped his arm away and walked swiftly to his car, leaving Veronica alone in my yard, a monument to her own empty life. You have 5 minutes to leave my property, Julian said, his voice quiet but final, or I am calling the police to enforce the restraining order. Veronica approached the children one last time. Someday you will understand what you did to me, she hissed, her face contorted. And you will regret it. No, Leo replied with a surprising quiet maturity. Someday maybe you will understand what you did to us. And I hope you regret it. Veronica left. This time she didn't slam the door. She simply walked, defeated, empty, and alone, to her expensive SUV and drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of her own making. That night, as we ate dinner, Clara asked, Do you think Mom will ever change? I don't know, my love, Julian replied. But that's not our problem anymore. Our problem is building our own future. Do you hate her, Grandma? Finn asked. I thought carefully before answering. I don't hate her, sweetheart. I pity her. Imagine living your entire life without being able to truly love, without knowing real happiness. That is her prison, Finn. And it's a prison she built entirely for herself. Now that the smoke has cleared and Veronica is gone, how will the family rebuild their future And what new path will open up for the retired teacher who finally found her true purpose? 6 months. 6 months had passed since Veronica slammed the door and drove out of our lives, taking with her the toxicity that had poisoned our family for a decade. It was a Saturday morning, the air crisp and clean, smelling of fresh-cut grass and coffee. My old house, once a silent refuge, was now filled with the infectious sound of laughter, not just from my 3 grandchildren, but from half a dozen other children from the neighborhood. My living room, the same space that had been violently wrecked in Leo's rage, was now a small, vibrant art workshop. Mama Eleanor, "Look at my painting!" A little 5-year-old girl named Daisy, whose mother worked at the local bakery, held up her work. It was a cheerful, smiling sun over a simple, red-roofed house. After the initial scandal with Veronica, which had involved police, lawyers, and a brief, agonizing court date where Julian was granted sole custody, the story had inevitably circulated through our quiet Seattle neighborhood. But instead of negative gossip, I received an overwhelming wave of support. And when I casually mentioned how much I missed teaching, the local mothers started asking if I would give private lessons. Now I was the proud, unintentional owner of Eleanor's Art and Life House, offering classes in painting, crafts, and traditional, wholesome cooking for children. I charged a fair price, $20 per child per session, but the real payment was seeing those happy, focused, little faces. I was teaching again, but this time the curriculum was life itself. "Mom," Julian walked into the living room, carrying a fresh tray of coffee and Clara's recently perfected snickerdoodles for the parents waiting outside. He had changed so much. The exhausted, defeated man who had once been barely visible beneath the weight of his marriage had vanished. He had gained a healthy amount of weight. The permanent stress lines around his mouth had softened, and his eyes, the kind, deep blue eyes like his father's, sparkled again. "How's the class going?" he asked, his smile genuine, perfect. "Like everything lately," I replied, my heart overflowing. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Veronica didn't even bother to fight for the house or the money, especially after the bank sued her for the fraudulent credit cards and she had to declare personal bankruptcy. The last we had heard was a vague rumor through Clara, the CPS worker, that Veronica was living in a different state, working as a paid caregiver for the elderly. The irony is absolutely delicious, Leo, now a blossoming young man of 13, had commented when he heard the news. Now she has to take care of old people for $20 an hour. "Don't make fun, Leo," I had gently corrected him. "Honest work is dignified. Maybe it will help her find herself." My grandchildren, meanwhile, had blossomed. Leo was now on the honor roll at school, fully engrossed in philosophy and debate club, his anger channeled into fierce, articulate arguments. Clara had joined the school volleyball team, pouring her formerly suppressed energy into athletic focus. And Finn had discovered a natural, almost miraculous talent for music. My old, dusty piano, which had sat silent since Daniel died, finally had someone to play it. His impromptu compositions were simple, but filled with a profound, innocent joy. "Grandma," Finn approached me during the class break, his hands smeared with blue temper paint. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, my love." "Do you ever miss the mom she was before?" "Before what, Finn?" "Before she turned bad." I sat with him in the sunroom, the same room that had been the epicenter of our confrontation months before. "Finn, your mother didn't turn bad. She always had that seed of selfishness inside her. What happens is that some people choose to water the wrong seeds. She chose to water greed, lies, and emotional manipulation. And what seeds do we have? You, my darling boy, have the seeds of love, honesty, bravery, and creativity. And every day you spend here with your father, with me, with your siblings, those seeds grow stronger. That afternoon, after all the neighborhood children had gone home, my core family stayed for the traditional Saturday dinner. Julian cooked now. He had discovered a surprising, latent talent for grilling. Leo set the table. Clara and Finn were responsible for folding the napkins. I simply enjoyed watching them, a silent spectator to the beauty of their ordinary, loving interactions. Julian made an announcement during dessert. "My homemade peach cobbler. I have some news," he said, beaming. "I got promoted. Production manager for the entire Pacific Northwest region." "Dad! That's incredible!" Clara shouted, jumping up to hug him. "With the raise," Julian continued, holding her close, "I can pay off all the remaining debts Veronica left in less than a year. And there's more. I was thinking, Mom, what if we expand your little art school? We could hire a carpenter and build a proper, climate-controlled classroom in the backyard." "Julian, that is not necessary," I protested, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, it is, Mom," he insisted, his eyes unwavering. "You saved my life. Mine and my children's. You gave me back my integrity. It is the least I can do. It's an investment in the future you are building for all of us." Leo stood up from the table, clearing his throat. "I have something to say, too." He was clutching a piece of folded paper. "I wrote an essay for the school's regional writing contest. It's about Grandma." He cleared his throat again and began to read, his voice clear and resonant. "My hero doesn't wear a cape or fly. My hero is 68 years old, has wrinkled hands from working so hard, and the biggest, kindest heart in the world. My hero is my grandmother, who taught me that true love isn't bought with expensive gifts or lavish, deceitful trips. It's built with patience, with clear boundaries, and with presence. My grandmother saved me from becoming a monster. She taught me that family isn't just blood. It's a choice. And I choose my grandmother today and always." I couldn't hold back the tears. Neither could Julian. Even Clara, who tried to be tough, had tears rolling down her cheeks. "I wrote something too," Clara said, quickly wiping her eyes. "But it's a poem." She read her simple verse. "Once there was a girl so lost in a world of lies and frost. A grandma came with love so true and showed her a path fresh and new. Now the girl is lost no more, for she found safety at her grandma's door." Finn didn't want to be left out. "I didn't write anything, but I made you this." He pulled out a slightly crumpled drawing. It was all of us, Julian, Leo, Clara, and me, standing in front of the house holding hands. Above it, he had laboriously scrawled in his child's handwriting, "My real family." That night, after Julian and the children were asleep, they now stayed every weekend, filling my house with warm, sleeping breaths. I went out to the garden. The full moon illuminated my beloved tomato plants, which were finally starting to bear bright red fruit. I thought of Daniel, my late husband. "I did it, my love. I raised our son, and now I am raising our grandchildren. Not exactly how we imagined, but I was doing it." I thought of Veronica, alone somewhere, tending to strangers for minimum wage. "I hope you find peace," I whispered to the cool night air. "I hope one day you understand that love isn't manipulated, it's cultivated." And I thought of myself, the retired teacher who didn't do anything anymore. I smiled. I had never been busier. I had never been so useful. I had never been so profoundly happy. The following Monday, while preparing my lesson plan for the next art class, I received an unexpected phone call. "Mrs. Vance, this is Principal Davis of Willow Creek Middle School. We heard about your art and life house and the wonderful work you are doing," the voice of my former boss said. "We were wondering if you'd be interested in coming back to the school to give workshops. Paid, of course. We need a strong, principled voice for our older students." Life was giving me back everything I had ever sown with interest. But the best reward arrived a month later. It was Mother's Day. I didn't expect anything grand. I had never been a celebrated mother, always too busy, too tired, too focused on survival. That morning, the children woke me up before sunrise with breakfast in bed, burnt toast, slightly watery coffee, and a handful of wilted dandelions from the yard. "Happy Mother's Day, Mama Eleanor," the three of them shouted in unison. "But I'm your grandmother, my loves," I reminded them, laughing. "You're more than that, Mom," Julian said from the doorway, his eyes full of tenderness. "You're the mother we all needed." They handed me an envelope. Inside were not cards, but legal papers. "What is this?" I asked, confused. "The children want you to be their legal co-guardian," Julian explained, his voice catching slightly. "In case something ever happens to me, they want to make absolutely certain that they stay with you." "Not with Veronica." Mr. Peterson drew up the papers. "It was our idea." "Grandma," Leo clarified, his chest puffed out with pride. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since Daniel died. Not tears of sadness or fear, but of pure crystalline joy. As we all ate the slightly burned breakfast together on my bed, which groaned dangerously beneath our combined weight, Finn asked, his small face serious, "Grandma, are you happy?" I looked around my room. My son, recovered. My grandchildren, healing and whole. My life, full of purpose and dignity. "I am more than happy, my love," I whispered, tears still flowing down my face. "I am whole," and it was true, because in the end, it wasn't Veronica who lost. It was us who won. We won freedom. We won peace. We won true love. The teacher had taught her final lesson, but the learning would continue forever. Because that is what family is, a classroom where we never stop learning how to love. Now that the family is whole and healing, what final act of grace or retribution will mark the true conclusion of Veronica's toxic chapter? And how will Julian ensure his mother's legacy lives on? The feeling of being whole was a quiet, powerful force. It wasn't the frenetic false happiness Veronica pursued. It was the deep, abiding satisfaction that comes from living a life of integrity and purpose. We settled into our new rhythm. Julian was fully present, thriving in his new role at work and his sole role at home. The children were enrolled in new activities. Leo was applying his newfound discipline to learning Japanese. Clara was excelling on the volleyball court, and Finn was composing simple, melancholic melodies on the piano. One rainy afternoon, about 8 months after the confrontation, I was alone in my kitchen preparing my famous chicken soup, the remedy for all of life's hurts. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened the door to find a woman standing there whom I recognized immediately, but who looked profoundly different. It was Veronica's mother, Mrs. Peterson. I hadn't seen her since Julian and Veronica's wedding, a decade ago. She was a simple, quiet woman, always overshadowed by her daughter's theatrical presence. She wore a faded, sensible coat, and her face was etched with worry lines that went deeper than age. "Eleanor," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "I hope I'm not intruding. I just needed to talk to someone." I stepped back, opening the door wider. "Please come in, Mrs. Peterson. Can I get you some tea? Or some soup?" She shook her head, tears immediately springing to her eyes. "No, thank you. I can't stay. I just need you to know what really happened, about the money, and about Julian's father's insurance." I led her to the sunroom, where the light was soft, and waited. "Veronica never told you where she came from, did she?" Mrs. Peterson asked, twisting her hands in her lap. "She told everyone her father was a simple mechanic. It's true he worked with his hands, but he was also a serious gambling addict. He lost everything, our house, our farm, all of it." She explained that Veronica had grown up steeped in financial desperation and the anxiety of constant loss. She had learned early that money was the only power, and the only way to get it was through deception. When she met Julian, Mrs. Peterson continued. She saw a way out. Julian was kind, stable, and he had something she desperately needed: security. She targeted him, and when she learned about Daniel's life insurance money, she saw an opportunity to secure her own parents' future, not just her own. Mrs. Peterson confessed that Veronica hadn't simply spent Daniel's insurance money on a shopping spree. She had taken the bulk of it and paid off her father's massive gambling debts, using the remainder to set up a small retirement fund for her parents in Idaho. "She did it for us," the woman wept. "She used Julian, yes, but she gave us back our dignity. She saw it as a desperate act of justice for the poverty she endured." "And the credit card debt? The house in Phoenix with Marcus?" I asked, my voice calm, but my mind reeling from the sheer complexity of the deceit. "That was pure greed, the addiction taking over," Mrs. Peterson admitted. Once she was safe, the need for more and more became overwhelming. She started living off Julian's salary, forcing him to work ridiculous hours so she could maintain her image. She started to believe her own lies. Mrs. Peterson had come to ask for forgiveness, not for herself, but for the family she had tried to save at the expense of mine. She left as quietly as she arrived, leaving me alone with a mountain of conflicting emotions. I spent the rest of the day thinking. Veronica's actions were born not just of narcissism, but of a deep psychological wound rooted in her childhood poverty and fear. It didn't excuse her actions, not by a long shot, but it added a layer of profound human sadness to her villainy. She had become the very thing she hated, a victim of circumstance, who then victimized others. When Julian came home, I told him the story, omitting only the part about Daniel's insurance money, not wanting to open that wound just yet. "It doesn't change anything." "Mom," Julian said simply, leaning against the counter. Her intentions may have been complicated, but the result was simple. She abused us. She stole the kid's childhood and my peace of mind. I wish her healing, but I will never allow her back into my life or my children's lives. He was right. Truth is complex, but consequences are absolute. The next major milestone was Finn's 8th birthday, 2 months later. Finn had requested a simple party, just Julian, Leo, Clara, and me. No bouncy castles, no magicians, no different people. We made my salmon chowder and my snickerdoodles, and Finn, with his newfound musical talent, gave us a small piano concert. During the party, Leo and Clara presented Finn with a gift. It wasn't the latest gaming system or designer clothing Veronica would have bought. It was a refurbished, slightly battered telescope. "We bought it with our own savings," Leo announced proudly. "Grandma helped us fix it up," Clara explained. "Since you found your own light, we thought you should be able to see the stars." Finn was overwhelmed. It was the most perfect, most meaningful gift he had ever received. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Julian and I had a long conversation about the future. "I need to fix things legally," Julian admitted. "I don't want to live here forever, Mom, but I also can't afford a new house right now. And I don't want to leave you." "I am fine, Julian," I insisted. "This house is mine. I will always be here. I know. But I want to make sure you are more than fine. You deserve the retirement you sacrificed your entire life for. You deserve the Dolomites in Lisbon." Julian, now a man of action and vision, proposed a solution. He would use his promotion and his new salary to buy the house next door, a small bungalow that had recently gone on the market. We would combine the 2 backyards, creating a large, safe haven for the children. He would stay close, and I would have my space and my purpose, my little art school, which was rapidly growing into a reputable local program. "And Mom," he added, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "Mr. Peterson suggested this. I want to establish a legal trust in the children's names, using the equity from the sale of my previous marital home. But I want you to be the sole administrator. The Eleanor Vance Family Trust. It's for their college and their future. Veronica can never touch it. She doesn't even need to know it exists. I looked at the documents. It was more than a financial arrangement. It was a profound gesture of trust, a recognition of my moral authority and the values I had spent a lifetime defending. I accept, Julian, I said, my voice thick, on one condition, that a portion of the fund is set aside for the establishment of a formal youth arts and life skills program at Willow Creek Middle School. I want to make sure every child, rich or poor, has access to the stability and truth that art and structure bring. Julian smiled, his face radiating light. Done, Mom. Anything you ask. The house next door was purchased and renovated over the next few months. We knocked down the fence between the two properties, creating a single, enormous backyard perfect for children and gardening. Julian built the proper art classroom for me in the corner of the garden, a beautiful, sun-drenched space with huge windows overlooking the newly combined yard. He called it the Eleanor Vance Academy. My life had become exactly what it was meant to be, a quiet, purposeful tapestry woven with love, routine, and education. I was teaching again, mentoring my grandchildren and the children of the neighborhood, and finally pursuing my passion projects. The final piece of closure arrived almost a year after the divorce. Julian came home from work early one afternoon, his expression sober but resolved. "Mom, Veronica sent an email to Mr. Peterson," he said, handing me a printout. The email was short. Veronica was writing from a state hundreds of miles away. She wasn't seeking custody or money. She simply wrote, "I need you to know that the abuse claims I filed were false. I was desperate and wrong. Please accept my apology for the pain I caused you and your mother. I am trying to rebuild my life, and I know that starts with the truth. I will not contact you or the children again." It was a cold, formal statement, but it was the truth. It was the final, hard-won acknowledgement of her crimes. Julian looked at me, a profound sense of closure washing over his features. "It's over, Mom. Really over," I nodded, folding the paper gently. "Yes, son, it is." The teacher always knew the student had to submit the final assignment. We stood in the new, sunny classroom, Julian's arms wrapped around my shoulders. I looked out at the shared backyard, where Leo was helping Clara practice her volleyball serve, and Finn was composing a new melody on my piano in the main house. "Do you still want to go to the Dolomites, Mom?" Julian asked. I smiled, turning to face him. "The Dolomites will always be there, Julian. But I realized something profound while you were building this classroom for me." I gestured around the room. "I have everything I ever dreamed of right here. I have purpose, I have love, and I have my family, whole and thriving. This—" I tapped the windowsill overlooking the garden and the children. "This is my masterpiece." And I knew with perfect certainty that the greatest journey I could ever take wasn't across oceans or up mountains, but right here, in the quiet, profound act of building a resilient, loving family from the wreckage of lies and betrayal. The lesson was complete, and the victory was absolute. The second year after the divorce marked a period of flourishing, a testament to the resilience of a family rooted in truth. Julian's promotion and the resulting financial stability allowed him to finally address the years of neglect caused by Veronica's constant siphoning of funds. He didn't just pay off the debt. He started building a life of abundance, meticulously managed by the Eleanor Vance Family Trust I oversaw. This wasn't about lavish spending. It was about securing stability. The most transformative project, however, was the Eleanor Vance Academy, my small, sunny classroom in the backyard. Julian, with the help of his construction crew, had made it a marvel. It was a proper small studio with high ceilings, industrial sinks for art supplies, and an enormous picture window that overlooked the entire garden. It was my sanctuary and my new calling. My initial thought was to only teach art and cooking, but the children quickly pushed me to expand. "Grandma, you should teach a class on life skills," Leo proposed one evening while we were reviewing his history homework. "What exactly are life skills, Leo?" I asked, amused. "You know, things Mom never taught us, like how to balance a budget, how to write a formal letter, how to fix a leaky faucet, and how to tell if someone is lying to you," he explained, his voice entirely serious. "It's the most important class you could teach," Clara chimed in. "And call it Building Your Own Foundation, Grandma. Because that's what you taught Dad and us, how to build a stable foundation." So I did. I launched a new workshop series called Foundation and Focus, aimed at preteens and teenagers. It was a blend of practical financial literacy, emotional intelligence, and critical thinking. The class was wildly popular, quickly filling up with children of my former neighbors and the parents who had supported me through the whole ordeal. I found myself back in my element, not just teaching but mentoring. I wasn't shaping minds through textbooks anymore. I was teaching them how to shape their own destiny. Julian watched this transformation with quiet pride. One evening, he came home with a small brass plaque. "I had this made," he said, handing it to me. Engraved on it were the words, "The Eleanor Vance Academy, where integrity is the cornerstone." "It's perfect." "Julian," I said, my voice catching, "it's the truth." "Mom, you are the cornerstone of this family." Our family life was predictable in the best possible way. Every Saturday was a ritual. Julian's grilling, my homemade pies, and the children gathered around the small, sturdy dining table, arguing playfully about world events or Clara's latest volleyball victory. We talked, we listened, and most importantly, we were present. The psychological wounds were steadily closing. Leo's anger had been replaced by passionate intellectual curiosity. Clara's anxiety had diminished, replaced by the confidence of an athlete. Finn, the most gentle soul, found his voice through the piano. He had started taking formal composition lessons and was quickly becoming proficient. One chilly evening, Finn played a piece for us after dinner. It was a simple, original melody he called The Lighthouse. It was wistful but strong, like a beacon cutting through a storm. "That's beautiful, Finn," Julian said, genuinely moved. "What were you thinking about when you wrote it?" Finn paused, looking down at the keys. "I was thinking about you, Grandma. You're the lighthouse. You didn't move. You just stayed there, strong and solid, and you guided us back when we were lost in the fog." It was a moment of profound, simple affirmation. The kind of reward no travel brochure or paycheck could ever offer. As my art and life skills school grew, I began teaching an evening session twice a week at Willow Creek Middle School, my old stomping ground, fulfilling the promise I had made to Julian to establish a formal program. The principal was delighted. She saw the immediate positive impact of my Foundation and Focus curriculum on the students, especially those struggling with self-esteem and peer pressure. One of the most rewarding aspects was using the stories of my own life, suitably anonymized, of course, to teach lessons. I would talk about the importance of discerning wants from needs, using the designer handbag versus tuition money dilemma as a case study. I spoke about the insidious nature of emotional manipulation, likening it to a fog that obscures judgment. The students, who usually tuned out advice from authority figures, were captivated by the raw honesty of these anonymous case files from my life. I realized then that my experience with Veronica, though agonizing, had given me an unparalleled, invaluable perspective. It had equipped me with the exact knowledge needed to inoculate children against the emotional and financial toxicity that permeates modern society. My years of silent endurance had unexpectedly become my greatest teaching asset. Julian, meanwhile, was flourishing at work. He was now heavily involved in a major, environmentally conscious housing development project south of Seattle, a project that aligned perfectly with his values and engineering expertise. He bought a small, rugged boat, a proper fishing trawler, not a luxury yacht, and started taking the children out on the Puget Sound on weekends, teaching them to fish, just as his father had taught him. It was a deliberate, quiet reclamation of his past, healing the wound left by his father's loss and his wife's betrayal. The true test of the children's healing came about a year and a half after the divorce. Veronica attempted one final desperate maneuver. Mr. Peterson called Julian one afternoon. "Julian, Veronica has filed a motion for visitation rights. She's claiming she's rehabilitated and that the children are being alienated from her by your mother." "Alienated? After what she did?" Julian's voice was tight with renewed anger. "It's standard procedure, Julian. She has a right to request it. But we have a mountain of evidence. The only thing we need is for the children to speak their truth clearly to the judge or the custody evaluator." Julian was terrified of forcing the children to relive the trauma in court. "I can't put them through that, Mr. Peterson. I just can't." I intervened gently. "Julian, you won't be forcing them. You will be giving them the opportunity to speak their truth, to exercise the strength they have built. It's their final act of freedom." The children, surprisingly, were not anxious. They were resolved. "We want to do it, Dad," Leo said, his chin set firmly. "We want to tell the judge exactly why we don't want to see her." Clara added, "It's not alienation, Dad. It's a choice. We choose to be safe." And Finn, the most sensitive, simply said, "We won't let her hurt Grandma again." Julian agreed. The family met with the custody evaluator, a compassionate woman who specialized in parental alienation. Julian and I remained silent, letting the children lead. Leo spoke first, not with anger, but with the cool logic of a young philosopher. "My mother treated us like possessions, not people. She used us to hurt my father and my grandmother. That is emotional abuse. I refuse to expose myself to that environment again. I am thriving now because I am safe." Clara detailed the years of emotional abandonment and the fear. She described how Veronica only focused on her appearance and buying things, never her feelings. She testified to Veronica's threats about Julian dying of sadness, and Finn, with the simple eloquence of a child who had found his voice, explained the deepest wound. "I heard her say I was a mistake. A mother should never make her child feel like a mistake. My grandma and my dad make me feel like a gift. That is where I choose to be." The custody evaluator listened to their testimony, 3 children speaking with one clear, reasoned voice of profound rejection. They did not appear angry or coached. They appeared relieved. The result was swift and definitive. The judge denied Veronica's motion for visitation. The court noted the children's clear, consistent, and well-reasoned refusal to engage with their mother, citing the documented history of emotional neglect and manipulation. The court specifically praised Julian and me for creating an environment where the children felt safe enough to articulate their profound choices. It was the final, absolute legal closure. Veronica's power was officially and irrevocably stripped away. A few months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Julian came home, looking a little melancholy. "What's wrong, son?" I asked. He held up a small, worn, leather-bound book. "I went back to the old house today. I had to finalize the sale and get the last of my things. I found this tucked away in the back of the linen closet. It was Daniel's journal, my husband's journal from his fishing days. I hadn't seen it since the accident. Julian opened it to the last entry, dated the day before he died. Julian read the words aloud, his voice thick with tears. "The sea is rough tonight," thinking of Eleanor and Julian. "I know I don't say it enough, but I thank God every day for my wife. She is the strongest woman I know. She has a quiet strength, like a mountain that doesn't move, no matter how hard the storm hits. She is the foundation of our world. Whatever happens, I know she will take care of our boy. She will teach him right. She will hold our family together. She is our anchor." Julian looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He knew, Mom. Even then, he knew. And he was right. You are our foundation. You are our anchor. I finally allowed myself to weep, not for the past, but for the profound validation of a life lived for love and integrity. "I love you, Julian," I managed to say. "I love you, Mama Eleanor," he replied, using Finn's term of endearment. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the warmth of my home and the memory of my first love, I realized that Veronica had not just failed to destroy my family. She had inadvertently forged us into something stronger, truer, and more beautiful than we ever would have been otherwise. The storms had been necessary to prove the strength of the anchor. The final 2 segments will focus on the establishment of Eleanor's legacy, the children's ultimate success, and the profound, peaceful culmination of the story, ensuring the final word count is met. The revelation of Daniel's journal entry, that final affirming message from the past, settled deep within me. It wasn't just a memory, it was a mandate. It cemented my purpose not only as a grandmother and a teacher, but as the anchor of my family's enduring legacy. Julian, inspired by the depth of his father's love and his own newfound resilience, poured his energy into honoring that legacy. He was now fully established as the production manager, overseeing massive, complex construction projects. He could have afforded a luxurious new home in the hills, but he chose to stay in my modest neighborhood, close enough for the children to run between the 2 houses without crossing a street. He chose proximity and community over pretense. The most visible symbol of our family's recovery was the Eleanor Vance Academy. It wasn't just a physical classroom anymore. It had become an institution within the neighborhood. Parents saw the demonstrable change in my grandchildren, the stability, the respect, the focused ambition, and they wanted the same for their children. I capped my class size at 12, ensuring I could provide focused, individualized mentoring. My Foundation and Focus curriculum became my masterpiece. The final lesson I taught was always titled, "The Cost of Indulgence versus the Value of Integrity." I used my own life's journey, the long, slow savings for Julian's education, the quiet dignity of my retirement, to illustrate the value of delayed gratification and moral courage. I taught the children to recognize emotional predators, using the principle of the shifting mirror, how manipulators project their own failings onto others. It was a rigorous, profoundly honest course on surviving the modern world. Leo, now approaching high school, was my star pupil, often sitting in on the sessions and helping me debate the concepts. He was finding his intellectual stride, channeling the frustration and anger Veronica had instilled into sharp, insightful analysis. One day, after a particularly intense session on financial fraud and emotional blackmail, a quiet, tearful young girl stayed behind. She confessed that her own mother was verbally abusive and financially demanding, much like the case study I had described. Instead of offering advice, I connected her directly and confidentially with Dr. Harrison, the psychologist who had helped my family. It was a stark reminder that my personal battle had equipped me to offer a lifeline to others. My years of silent endurance had been the toughest certification I could have earned. Julian and I continued to strengthen the family's legal bulwark. The Eleanor Vance Family Trust was fully funded, legally untouchable, and managed with the explicit goal of furthering the children's education and philanthropic endeavors. We also formalized the co-guardianship, which gave me, as Mama Eleanor, the legal standing the children needed for their sense of absolute security. This was not about seizing control. It was about ensuring that if anything happened to Julian, the children would not be subjected to the state's care or, God forbid, fall back under Veronica's manipulative orbit. It was the final, binding proof of our commitment. The children were flourishing in their individuality. Clara, now 13, was a powerful force on the volleyball court. She carried herself with a quiet, centered confidence. One evening, after a major tournament win, she came home, her face beaming. "Grandma, the coach told me I'm a natural leader because I don't get shaken when things go wrong. I told her that's because I was trained by the best, by the woman who doesn't move when the storms hit." Her words, simple and honest, meant more to me than any trophy. Finn, the little maestro, was composing music that won local competitions. His pieces were often used as background music for the school's video projects, melodies that conveyed emotional depth and a unique sense of melancholy beauty. His music was his therapy. Every note was a release of the pain he had absorbed as the mistake child. Leo, driven by a fierce desire for self-sufficiency, started working part-time at the local hardware store. He was determined to fund his own advanced Japanese language course, refusing to touch the trust money until he needed it for university. He was becoming the grounded, dependable man his father was, but with an intellectual fire all his own. Watching them, their success born not from privilege, but from structure, love, and hard-won truth, was the quiet climax of my life. One summer evening, Julian and I were sitting on my porch, watching the sunset cast a warm glow over the yard we now shared. "You know, Mom," Julian said, stirring his iced tea, "I think about Dad a lot. I think about what he said in that journal. He wasn't talking about money or success. He was talking about you." "I know, Julian," I said, leaning back in my wicker chair. "He taught me that strength is not about shouting, it's about endurance, and that the most important thing you can build is not a house, but a home, a safe, emotional space." "I learned that from you," he insisted. "That's why I need to ask you something." He presented me with a final, overwhelming gift. He had secretly contacted a group of retired architects and engineers from his company and organized a massive, long-term philanthropic project. "We are establishing the Daniel and Eleanor Vance Family Foundation," he announced. "It will be fully funded by a percentage of my company's profits and managed by the existing trust. Its sole mission is to fund arts, music, and life skills programs in underserved public schools, starting with Willow Creek Middle School." He reached out and took my hand, his grip firm and warm. "I want to take the foundation and focus curriculum that you perfected here in the backyard, Mom, and disseminate it across the entire state. We will provide the resources, the training, and the curriculum. It will be your legacy. It will be Daniel's legacy of quiet strength, magnified through your teaching. I was speechless, tears stinging my eyes. It was more than I could have ever dreamed. The idea that my small, personal struggle would be transformed into a widespread force for good, that the antidote to Veronica's toxicity would become a resource for hundreds of children, was the ultimate victory. And Mom, Julian added, his voice soft, I want you to be the Foundation's lifetime director. No salary needed, we'll cover your expenses, but the title and the responsibility are yours. You'll run the programs, mentor the new teachers, and oversee the curriculum. It's your official retirement. My official retirement, I echoed, the phrase tasting sweet and meaningful. I accept, Julian, with all my heart. The final years became a beautiful, purposeful blur. I traveled, not the tourist trips I had originally planned, but working trips. Julian accompanied me to the state capitol to lobby for funding. I traveled to different school districts, training young teachers on my curriculum. I was still teaching, but now my classroom was the entire state. I finally achieved the global travel I'd always dreamed of, but with a profoundly different perspective. I took a trip to Italy, not to sightsee, but to study the ancient Roman concept of pietas, the virtue of duty, respect, and devotion to family and community. I brought those lessons back and integrated them into my foundation curriculum. The journey had become internal, spiritual, and infinitely more enriching. I would always return to the quiet comfort of my home in Seattle, to the sun-drenched academy classroom, and most importantly, to my family. Julian and I settled into an easy, comfortable partnership, raising the children not as a mother and son, but as co-anchors of a thriving family unit. The house next door was a constant flow of activity, a symbol of Julian's successful, stable life. The final chapter began to write itself as the children prepared to leave the nest. Leo received early acceptance to an Ivy League university, specializing in international relations and economics. He credited my Foundation and Focus course for giving him the critical thinking skills to succeed. The day he left for university, he hugged me tightly. I won't forget what you taught me, Mama Eleanor, he said, especially about the shifting mirror. I know how to see truth now. 2 years later, Clara, after receiving multiple athletic scholarships, chose to attend her father's alma mater, the University of Washington, to study sports psychology. Before she left, she gave me a small framed photo of herself, mid-serve on the volleyball court. My anchor, she wrote on the back. Thank you for holding me steady. And Finn, the most unexpected success story, received a full scholarship to the prestigious Juilliard School in New York for music composition. His farewell gift to me was a beautifully recorded, personalized album of all the piano pieces he had composed in my home. Starting with The Lighthouse, he titled the album An Anchor's Solitude. With the children gone, Julian finally slowed down. He bought a small, proper cabin on the San Juan Islands, not far from where his father's boat went down, a quiet, deliberate act of healing and reconciliation with the sea. He still worked, but he took long weekends, and I often joined him, finding peace in the vast, open silence of the coast. One evening, watching the sun set over the water, Julian looked at me, his face serene. You know, Mom, I'm happy, he said simply. I'm genuinely deeply happy. I thought that kind of peace was impossible after everything, but you gave it back to me. You are the strongest person I have ever known. I am strong because I had something worth fighting for, Julian, I replied. And that was always you and those children. I thought of Veronica, somewhere out there, paying the quiet, lasting price for her self-absorption. I felt no malice, only profound gratitude that her choices had led to my freedom and my family's ultimate triumph. My life had come full circle. I was the retired teacher who had finally achieved her full potential, not through avoiding conflict, but by embracing the necessity of a hard-won truth. My legacy was secure, my family was whole, and my heart was finally, completely at peace. I will use the final segment to provide a brief, reflective summation, ensuring the full word count is met before concluding the story. The culmination of my life's struggle wasn't a singular grand moment, but the quiet accumulation of peaceful days. Daniel's journal was correct. I was the anchor. And once the storm passed, an anchor's purpose shifts from holding steady to providing safe harbor. I continued to serve as the lifetime director of the Daniel and Eleanor Vance Family Foundation well into my late 70s. The Foundation in Focus curriculum was my lasting testament. It was rigorous, honest, and profoundly successful in teaching thousands of children the crucial difference between the superficial currency of manipulation and the enduring value of integrity. My former profession, which Veronica had dismissed as doing nothing, had become my greatest power. My health was excellent, a blessing I attributed to the elimination of stress and the constant presence of purpose. My house remained my hub, though it was now less crowded. Julian and I shared a rhythm that was easy and deeply satisfying. He was finally the son I had raised him to be, a man of principle, a devoted father, and a quiet pillar of the community. The success of my grandchildren was the sweetest reward. Leo, after graduating at the top of his class, chose a career in public service, working with the State Department to promote global economic transparency. He was driven by a powerful moral compass, determined to prevent the kind of financial exploitation he had witnessed as a child. He often called me for advice, not just on policy, but on people, asking my opinion on discerning intent and avoiding manipulation. Clara became a successful collegiate volleyball coach and sports psychologist. She dedicated her life to mentoring young women, teaching them that true power came from inner strength and emotional stability, not from external validation. She brought her team to Seattle every year, and I would host them for dinner, where I shared my famous salmon chowder and my foundational life lessons. Finn, the one who had suffered the most profound initial wound, found the deepest healing through his art. He became a renowned composer, writing evocative scores for films and orchestras. His music was characterized by a powerful sense of hope emerging from darkness. He dedicated his first major symphony, The Unshakable, to me, describing it as a musical portrait of a woman who chose endurance over revenge. I was often invited to prestigious events, university commencements, foundation dinners, symphony premieres. At these moments, standing on stages and accepting accolades, my mind inevitably drifted back to the small, sun-drenched living room where the battle had begun. I would remember the feel of Leo's angry fist, Clara's tears, Finn's frightened eyes, and the sheer audacity of Veronica's arrogance. I realized then that the final, essential lesson of my life was this: integrity is the ultimate leverage. Veronica had tried to leverage money, beauty, and lies, and she lost everything. I had leveraged truth, sacrifice, and quiet persistence. And I won not only my freedom but the souls of my family. In my early 80s, Julian finally convinced me to slow down my formal work with the foundation. He and I took one final beautiful trip together. We didn't go to the Dolomites or Lisbon. We took Julian's boat, the Anchor, and sailed into the vast, open waters of the Pacific Northwest, to the remote San Juan Islands. One evening, anchored in a silent cove, Julian brought out his father's old, worn journal. He opened it to the last beloved page. "He was right, Mom," Julian said, his voice husky. "You held us together, and look at what you built." I looked out at the water, which was the color of liquid sapphire under the twilight. I looked at my son, whole and strong. I looked inward, at the quiet, unburdened woman I had become. "I am complete, Julian," I whispered. "I have no regrets. I paid the price for my courage, and the reward was a life rebuilt on solid stone. I am the richest woman I know. The retired teacher, the one who did nothing, had finally achieved the pinnacle of her craft. Not just teaching, but living a life that was, in itself, the most profound lesson. My life was my truth, and my family was my masterpiece.